Chapter 32. Ling Shi was stunned. He didn't expect his opponent to agree so easily. He asked in astonishment, "Aren't you afraid that I'll run away?" "Run? You can try. I can also guarantee that you will suffer a fate worse than death." Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and impatiently said, "Take out the item. I don't want to repeat myself a third time." Ling Shi sighed. No matter how good the item was, it wasn't as important as his life. After thinking about it, he didn't have the confidence that he could escape. He could only nod silently and step on the collapsed bricks as he walked out. Yu Qianqiu retreated and stared at him coldly. Although he said that he would let his opponent go, he still maintained a certain level of vigilance. He followed Ling Shi to the main hall and looked around. The Taoist temple was simple and didn't have many decorations. In the center, there was a deity worshipped, but he couldn't recognize who it was. A large praying mat below attracted Yu Qianqiu's attention. His eyelids twitched as he thought to himself, could the immortal supporting token be hidden here? While Ling Shi was still sighing, Yu Qianqiu took a few steps forward and grabbed the praying mat. The former's expression instantly changed. Hua! The praying mat was torn apart, and 2 items fell to the ground. The buckwheat husks inside were scattered all over the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Ling Shi and slowly picked up the 2 items. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian also came in. His boss's ferocity just now was deeply engraved in his heart, but he didn't know why his boss would fight with his life on the line. Seeing Yu Qianqiu playing with the 2 items in his hands, and then looking at Ling Shi's reluctant gaze, Shi Xiaotian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that boss is fighting so hard just to snatch other people's items? Yu Qianqiu carefully examined the items in his hands. The 2 items were a wooden token and a jade plate. The wooden token was simple and unadorned, and its sides were engraved with patterns. On one side, the words, "Supporting Immortals," were engraved. On the other side, the image of an island was engraved. Releasing his divine sense to investigate, he could feel a roaming wave of true qi. Clearly, it was injected by someone. Needless to say, this was the so-called Supporting Immortals token. The words 100 Flowers Valley were engraved on the Jade Archive. There was also a surge of Jinqi that had been channeled into the Jade Archive. There was nothing special about the rest of it, and no one knew what it was used for. Yu Qianqiu looked at the spirit stone and asked, "What is this thing used for?" Spirit Stone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that the thing he had spent so much effort to hide would be found out so quickly. He had thought that no one would notice where he had hidden it. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's question and looking at the thing in his hand, he was slightly taken aback. "You don't even know about the 100 Flowers Valley? Is it famous?" Holding the Jade Archive, Yu Qianqiu gave Shi Xiaotian a questioning look. The latter also shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. He couldn't help but ask in a deep voice, "Am I asking you, or are you asking me?" Spirit Stone was taken aback. He thought to himself that he had tolerated it. It was his own fault for not being able to defeat Shi Xiaotian. Sighing, he explained, "This is the entrance token to the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Valley is a marketplace for cultivators of the Xia Empire. As long as you can afford it, you can buy almost anything there. You can also exchange items for items of similar value." "Oh. That's a good place. Give me the 100 Flowers token as well," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. "Ah!" Spirit Stone exclaimed, "What's the use of my 100 Flowers token? This thing is just a proof to avoid being interrogated when entering the 100 Flowers Valley in the future. Any cultivator who enters or exits the 100 Flowers Valley, regardless of their level, can register and claim it. It's useless to take someone else's token." "I see." Yu Qianqiu nodded and asked, "Where are the locations of Fuxian Island and the 100 Flowers Valley?" You don't even know this?" Spirit Stone looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He really wondered if Yu Qianqiu was a cultivator. "What? You have a problem with that? Don't you know what it means to be shameless to ask your subordinates?" Although Yu Qianqiu said so, he was also lamenting in his heart that he was indeed inexperienced. He was a complete rookie in the cultivation world. Rolling his eyes at Spirit Stone, he thought to himself, this guy is a little useful. Spirit Stone decided not to say it. He thought, whatever you say is right, why should I ask for a rebuff? Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and paced around. He thought for a while and said to Shi Xiaotian, I'm leaving. Where are you going? The 100 Flowers Valley or Fuxian Island? I'm going too. Shi Xiaotian said. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, there's only one Fuxian token. You go back first. After I find the Foundation establishment pill, I'll come find you. Don't worry. I won't forget you. Shi Xiaotian was silent. After a long time, he nodded and said, I understand. I'll wait for you. Boss, be careful. After that, he walked out of the main hall and called his big brother who was hiding at the side. Spirit Stone saw the boy lying on the ground. He went to check, but there was no breath. Yu Qianqiu kicked him to death. Spirit Stone shook his head and sighed. Is he dead? Yu Qianqiu asked indifferently. Spirit Stone nodded his head heavily. It could be seen that he wasn't very sad. To a cultivator, killing a commoner wasn't a big deal. Yu Qianqiu weighed the 100 Flowers token in his hand and handed it over with a smile. He said, I'll return it to you. Ling Shi stood up, his gaze lingering on the other immortal supporting medallion. He shook his head helplessly and extended his hand to accept the 100-flower medallion. Suddenly, his wrist tightened. The hand that was handing over the medallion had already grabbed his wrist. Ling Shi turned pale with fright and shouted angrily, You didn't keep your word. Before he could finish speaking, his vision suddenly blurred, and the scene changed. After pulling Spirit Stone into the Golden Pearl, Yu Qianqiu laughed and let go of him. Spirit Stone looked around and shouted, Where is this? Let me out. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, You should feel honored. This is my territory. Ordinary people don't have the fortune to enter. You untrustworthy and despicable person. You promised that as long as I handed over the Fuxian token, you would let me go. Why did you imprison me? Spirit Stone pointed his finger and cursed. No, you're mistaken. Don't you think that I did what I promised you? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, First, I only said that I wouldn't kill you if you handed over the token. I didn't say that I would let you go. That's why you are still alive and well. Second, you didn't hand over the token. I found it myself. If you think about it carefully, you will know that I wasn't talking nonsense. Just based on this, I won't be breaking my promise if I kill you. Sophistry, I will fight you to the death. Spirit Stone Immortal roared and fiercely pounced over, fiercely hacking his palm towards Yu Qianqiu. The latter smiled and disappeared. Spirit Stone missed. A mocking laugh came from behind him. If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as flipping my hand. If you want to kill me, it will be as difficult as ascending to heaven. So, I advise you not to waste your energy. Spirit Stone was so angry that he cried out. He turned and pounced at Yu Qianqiu again. However, no matter what he did, Yu Qianqiu always disappeared with a smile. This went on for a long time. Suddenly, Spirit Stone seemed to think of something. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and shouted, Form displacement transposition? Is this the form displacement transposition that only a cultivator at the end of the crossing tribulation stage can use? This. How is this possible? Could it be that you have been hiding your cultivation? No. This is impossible. Although Spirit Stone said it was impossible, after he calmed down, he felt a little afraid. Regardless of whether this was really form displacement transposition, with Xiao Chen's cultivation, killing him would be as easy as flipping his hand. It turned out that Xiao Chen had been playing with him in the Taoist temple. Thinking of this, Spirit Stone's heart turned cold. Finally, he lowered his hands, no longer thinking of fighting with his life on the line. Of course, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't tell him that he could go wherever he wanted here. He smiled mysteriously and said, knowing that it's impossible, but not doing it. This is what a smart person would do. Spirit Stone Immortal, go over there and see what's over there. After saying that, he pointed at a mountain of cloth bags. Spirit Stone raised his head and looked in the direction he was pointing. He looked at Xiao Chen suspiciously. In the end, he walked to the foot of the mountain. Many of the cloth bags were open, revealing spirit stones. It was as if they were things that no one wanted and were casually thrown there. Could this mountain be made of spirit stones? Spirit Stone Immortal was shocked. He had never seen so many spirit stones before. Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared beside him and said with a smile, "That's right. These are all spirit stones. They are all mine. Now you should know which one of us is worthy of being called Spirit Stone Immortal." Spirit Stone Immortal was now completely convinced. He couldn't beat Xiao Chen in a fight, but Xiao Chen could use money to crush him. He couldn't help but reveal an embarrassed expression. He said embarrassedly, "My name is Ji Wushuang. After I left supporting Immortal Island, I wandered into Spirit Stone Temple. That's why people respectfully called me Spirit Stone Immortal." There were some things that he didn't say. After he chased away the original owner of Spirit Stone Temple, he became Spirit Stone Immortal. Yu Qianqiu kept staring at Spirit Stone Immortal's expression. He was very satisfied with the current effect. This was the effect he wanted when he brought Spirit Stone Immortal here. Yu Qianqiu had no experience in the cultivation world, so he needed such a person to be his follower. As for Spirit Stone Immortal's trivial matters, he couldn't be bothered. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "What's Spirit Stone Immortal? Chicken is peerless and duck is peerless. It sounds so bad. I'll change your name. I guarantee it will sound better than now." "Change my name?" Spirit Stone Immortal asked in astonishment. "Why? You don't want to?" Yu Qianqiu shouted in a deep voice. Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head silently. He didn't agree, but he also didn't say that he didn't agree. Anyone would feel uncomfortable changing their name again and again. Yu Qianqiu stared at Spirit Stone Immortal's red face and 3 strands of long beard. He blushed and said, "From now on, you will be called Guan Yu." Guan Yu's courtesy name is Yunchang. It means Guan, as in gate, Yu, as in feather, Yun, as in white cloud, and Long, as in long. What do you think of this name? Guan Yu, courtesy name is Yunchang. Spirit Stone Immortal couldn't figure out why he chose this name. He muttered a few times but couldn't find anything special about it. He was puzzled and asked, "Why did you choose this name?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and made a mighty pose of wielding the green dragon crescent blade. He said, "Don't you think this name is very mighty, very bold, and very weighty?" Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head and muttered, "I can't tell. Guan Yu, how weighty can a feather be? Looks like this guy isn't too satisfied." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and chuckled. He said, "As long as you promise to use this name in the future, I can also guarantee that you will succeed in building your foundation within 10 years. "Really?" Spirit Stone Immortal's eyes lit up. He said happily, "As long as you can really help me succeed in building my foundation within 10 years, I promise that I will never change my name from now on, Guan Yu. If I can't do it, I will naturally change my name back." It's a deal. It's a deal." Both of them laughed loudly. Yu Qianqiu happily patted his shoulder and said, "Guan Yu, from now on, you will follow me well. I guarantee that you will eat and drink well every day. Sooner or later, you will cultivate to the tribulation passing stage." Spirit Stone nodded and smiled. He didn't know why this guy was so happy just because he changed his name. Sigh. Sure enough, experts all have some strange hobbies. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased. In his previous life, he had offered countless incense sticks to Second Master Guan and kowtowed countless times, but in the end, he still died. Now, he got Guan Yu as his follower. He believed that he would definitely be very impressive when he went out. No. When we go out, I have to order a set of green robes and a green hat for him to wear. Then, I have to carry a long sword on my waist and hold the hilt of the sword in my hand while following behind me. This way, I will look impressive, scary, and awesome when I go out. Chapter 33. Although he was pleased with himself, he did not believe that a few simple promises could completely subdue a person. It was necessary to use the necessary methods. He still had to ask the white fox about this. With a thought, the entire space within the golden bead appeared in his mind, including every blade of grass and every tree. After reaching the 10th level of chi refining, the territory inside the golden bead had expanded by dozens of times. What made Yu Qianzhou pleasantly surprised was that small streams and lakes began to appear in his territory. Because of this, he purposely got a lot of different kinds of fish to raise: birds, beasts, flowers, and plants. The bamboo pavilion was empty. Sister Bai must have gone to play with the flowers and plants again. It was already slowly changing. This was a good thing. The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth slightly curled up, revealing a smile. His thoughts changed. In a flower bed, the white fox in snow-white clothes was squatting in the flower bed, pulling out the weeds. Guan Yu held a pile of high-grade spirit stones and smacked her lips, asking, "I still haven't asked how I should address you." "Yu Qianzhou, you can call me boss from now on." Yu Qianzhou replied, then immediately said, "Wait here, I'll be back soon." After saying that, his figure disappeared. Guan Yu did not deny it and sneered, "Yu Qianzhou, boss, beauty," pulling out the weeds again. Yu Qianzhou suddenly appeared beside the white fox in the flower bed. The latter seemed to be used to this. She did not even raise her head and was still busy with her work. She only frowned and asked, "Why did you bring someone in again?" "Sister, don't be offended. It's just that the territory is getting bigger and bigger, so I specially found someone to plant trees." Yu Qianzhou casually replied. The white fox did not say anything else. The former squatted beside her and smiled, "Sister, let me ask you something. I want to control someone and make him loyal to me. Do you have any ideas?" The white fox stopped what she was doing and frowned. "Who do you want to control?" "Hey. It's this guy I brought in. Just now, we were fighting with our lives on the line outside. Your little brother, almost died in his hands. I brought him in here. If he can't beat me, he'll surrender. But who knows if he's sincere or just pretending?" Yu Qianzhou said worriedly. White Fox's complexion changed when she heard that her brother had almost been killed. She raised her beautiful face and saw that the corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth was clearly stained with blood. His clothes were also torn. It was obvious that he had fought with someone and was injured. She immediately snorted coldly and disappeared. Yu Qianzhou was startled. Suddenly, a scream came from afar. While he was still in shock, the white fox appeared out of nowhere with a low-grade spirit stone in her hand. She said coldly, "I've trapped his yuanshan here, you can use it without worry. If he dares to have any other thoughts, I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death." After he finished speaking, a ball of flames appeared in his hand and wrapped around the spirit stone. Immediately, a series of wails came from afar. The flames disappeared, and the wailing stopped. The white fox placed the spirit stones into the small sachet on its waist. Oh my God! So powerful. Luckily, he didn't do anything to Sister White. Otherwise, if he did, it would be fun. Yu Qianzhou's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He smiled awkwardly, "Sister, you're really good. I wonder if you can teach me. If your cultivation hasn't reached the original infant stage, you can't forcefully extract other people's yuanshan. Also, the caster's cultivation must be higher than the caster's unless the caster is willing to give up their yuanshan." After the white fox finished speaking, she squatted down and continued with her work. Hee. I'll go see how he's doing." Seeing that she ignored him, Yu Qianzhou glanced at the white robe wrapped around her buttocks. Because she was working, his little heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, what a sexy buttocks. His figure suddenly disappeared. Guan Yu's red face had already turned pale. He sat on the ground and stared blankly at Yu Qianzhou's appearance. He scrambled to hug his thigh and trembled. There's a woman. There's a woman here who forcefully extracted my yuanshen. Yu Qianzhou, no. Boss. Do you know her? Help me beg her to return my yuanshen. Guan Yu was indeed scared out of his wits. When the woman in white first appeared, he was still amazed by her beauty. Who would have thought that the sudden burst of aura would force him to the point that he could not even move? She placed one hand on his head and easily pulled out his natal primordial spirit. The pain was simply worse than death. He was very clear that if his yuanshen was controlled by someone, it meant that his life was in someone else's hands. If that person was unhappy, he wouldn't even be able to run. Ah! Yu Qianzhou cried out in alarm. Your natal primordial spirit was also extracted? Guan Yu's trembling body stopped. He slowly raised his head and said in shock, Is your yuanshen also, AI? Who said it wasn't? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and helped Guan Yu up. But you don't need to worry. She's my big sister. Since you're one of my people now, I can guarantee that you won't be in danger with your primordial spirit trapped in her hands. What? She's your sister. Guan Yu screamed and pushed him away. He shouted, She's your sister. Of course you don't have to worry. It must be you and your brother who conspired to kill me. I'll kill you. Guan Yu just waved his palm and took a step forward. The muscles on his face twisted and he fell to the ground with a bang. A miserable scream came from his throat. He rolled around on the ground, looking extremely painful. Even Yu Qianzhou couldn't stand it anymore. The white fox's voice came from the air. If you dare to have any evil intentions towards my brother again, I'll make your life worse than death. I won't dare. Guan Yu used all his strength to choke out. Then, his body loosened and he laid on the ground again. It was indeed a good way to control people. But he couldn't discourage him from doing things for him in the future. Yu Qianzhou stared at him. After confirming that he was fine, he sighed. Yunchang. You're too impulsive. Do you still remember that 10th level qi refining cultivator who called me boss? Just like you, his yuanshen was also extracted by my sister. But he knew how to behave. He knew that my sister liked to take care of flowers and plants. Look at the flowers and trees here. They were all done by him. Guess what happened in the end? My sister was happy and returned his yuanshen. Now, he's alive and well. Yunchang. You're worth learning from. Guan Yu, who had been staring at him with dead fish eyes, moved his eyeballs. There was some spirit in them. His Adam's apple trembled as he said, You're not lying to me? He struggled to get up. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes at him and snorted. Do I look like the kind of person who would lie to people so easily? Guan Yu's gaze fell on the forest. He realized that those trees were indeed not native. There were obviously traces of them being transplanted. He nodded thoughtfully. Do you know why I named you Guan Yu? Yu Qianzhou asked. Seeing him shake his head, he asked again, Do you know that there are other empires outside of the Huaxia Empire? The latter nodded, indicating that he knew. He asked again, Then have you been there? The latter still shook his head. Yu Qianzhou heaved a sigh of relief. He sighed. Let me tell you a story. In the Far East, there was an empire whose regime had decayed. There was a scene of warlords fighting for power. At that time, there were 3 heroes named Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei. The 3 of them became sworn brothers in the Peach Garden. Guan Yu beheaded Yan Liang and Wen Chou. Guan Yu was in the Chao camp, but his heart was in the Han camp. Guan Yu protected his sister-in-law 1,000 miles away, overcame 5 passes, and beheaded 6 generals. Guan Yu dragged his blade to subdue Huang Zhong. Guan Yu went to the battle alone. Guan Yu Maicheng. Let's not talk about it. Anyway, in the end, Guan Yu became a well-known hero in the empire. He was a courageous and loyal hero. Every family offered incense and worshipped him, and people called him Second Master Guan. After he finished, he thought to himself that it was a close call. He almost told them about how Guan Yu was beheaded. Seeing Yu Qianqiu narrate the story so vividly, Guan Yu's chest heaved. He stood up and stared at Yu Qianqiu, scaring the latter. He said slowly, "You're not lying to me, are you? Is there really such a hero? What? Am I the kind of person who would lie to others? I swear to God, if I made up Guan Yu's story, I curse myself to be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and swore. He thought to himself, "I don't know if Guan Yu's story is true or not, but I definitely didn't make it up. Since there really is such a heroic person, it's not wrong for me to take his name, it's also fitting. From now on, I'll be called Guan Yu, Guan Yunchang." After he finished, he stroked his long beard and made a signature gesture of the Guan family that Yu Qianqiu had mentioned. It was quite similar. Chapter 34. Don't talk about useless things. Guan Yunchang did it, not said it. Yu Qianqiu pulled Miao Yi out of the golden pearl and back to the Daoist Temple of Spirit Stones. He took out the jade archive and handed it to Miao Yi, saying, "First, take me to 100 Flowers Valley for a stroll." Guan Yu took it and saw that the Taoist priest was about to leave. He heaved a long sigh and said, "Wait." Then he walked over to the boy who had been dead for a long time and carried him to the back of the hall to bury him. Yu Qianqiu nodded, thinking that he had some humanity. When the two of them reached the foot of the mountain, they found the horse still tied under the tree. Yu Qianqiu untied the reins and mounted it, saying, "Follow me." Then he urged the horse to gallop. "You want me to run on a horse?" Guan Yu's red face was clouded, but his primordial spirit was in the hands of his sister, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He raised his Zhenqi to the limit, leaped up, and followed. Yu Qianqiu didn't lead him anywhere else, but back to the capital. They didn't go back to the Pillar of State General's mansion, though. The two of them changed out of their tattered clothes and redressed themselves. At Guan Yu's request, Yu Qianqiu spent a lot of effort to dress him up as the Guan Yu from the Three Kingdoms. Guan Yu stood there with a green hat and green robes, a long sword at his waist, and his hand on the hilt of the sword. What an imposing sight. Yu Qianqiu's eyes shone with a strange light. He really was a living Yunchang Guan. But when he thought about how this Guan Yu used to be a Taoist priest and swindle people, he couldn't help but laugh. The owner of the tailor's shop couldn't help but praise, "Sir, you have a good look." Guan Yu couldn't contain his joy, and called for the owner to bring him a bronze mirror. As expected, a red-faced Guan Yu appeared in the mirror, wearing a green robe and a green hat, holding a long sword in his hand. His eyes were closed, but he didn't look angry. He almost couldn't recognize himself. After exiting the tailor's shop, Guan Yu followed beside Yu Qianqiu. He was secretly trying to figure out Yunchang's unparalleled demeanor that boss had mentioned. He held the hilt of his sword and walked forward with his head held high and chest puffed out. When the passers-by saw this, they all looked over and whispered, "This person really looks mighty and extraordinary." Guan Yu's gaze was even more focused. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and took a glance. He was overjoyed and thought to himself, "Who's as awesome as I am?" leading Guan Yu around on the streets. The two of them arrived at the horse market and wanted to buy a horse. After walking around the horse market a few times, Guan Yu still couldn't find a horse that he was satisfied with. Yu Qianqiu became a little impatient and shouted, "Is there a need to go through so much trouble to choose a transportation tool?" Guan Yu stroked his long beard and said slowly, "Didn't you say that Yunchang's horse is called Red Rabbit, and that it's a precious horse that can travel 1,000 miles in a day? Of course I have to choose a good horse." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him and felt a toothache. He blamed himself for reaping what he sowed and was completely speechless. In the end, they really couldn't find that so-called precious horse, so they could only choose a healthy one. Guan Yu sighed endlessly. The two of them got on the horse and went straight out of the city gate, leaving a trail of dust behind them. It was troublesome that he hadn't reached the foundation building stage. Otherwise, if he could fly on a sword, he wouldn't have to go through the pain of running around for days. 10 days later, Guan Yu led Yu Qianqiu to a forest deep in the mountains. Looking around, the mountain road ahead was rugged. It was already impossible to travel on a horse. Yu Qianqiu jumped off the horse and pointed to the depths of the clouds in front of them. He asked, "Is that the 100 Flowers Valley?" "It doesn't look like it. It's impossible to see people in the clouds." Guan Yu also got off the horse and smiled. After spending a few days with Yu Qianqiu, he found that he wasn't the kind of person that was hard to get along with, so he felt a lot more at ease. He explained, "If anyone could see Baihua sect, then wouldn't it be troublesome? Wouldn't even those normal people be able to come and go as they please?" Baihua Palace set up a big formation in the 100 Flowers Valley. The clouds are only a distraction, mainly to stop normal people from going in and out. "Let's go." "But what about these 2 horses?" "What? Are you going to send them to your parents?" "Just leave them here." Yu Qianqiu laughed mockingly. Guan Yu stroked his beard and pondered for a while. Then, he pulled out the long sword from his waist and broke the reins of the 2 horses. He removed the saddles and slashed the horses' buttocks twice. The 2 horses neighed in pain and ran into the deep mountains without any restraint. "Ha! You're quite kind, but there are probably quite a lot of ferocious beasts in this forest. I don't know if they'll be able to live past today." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. Guan Yu was surprised by his words. He looked at the direction the horses ran in and said in a low voice, "They better pray for themselves. This isn't something we can handle. Come on, let's go up the mountain." Before he could finish his words, the sound of horses neighing could be heard, and the 2 horses ran back. Guan Yu was a bit dumbfounded. Yu Qianqiu laughed, "These horses are used to being tamed, they can't survive in the wild. They'll probably run back in fear as soon as they smell the feces of ferocious beasts. Forget it, I'll just be a bit kind." Saying so, he walked up to the 2 horses and touched them. The 2 horses disappeared. Seeing that Guan Yu was still in a daze, he waved his hand and said, "What are you spacing out for? Let's go. I've already sent them to my sister's place." Guan Yu shook his head and said, "I'm not in a daze. I'm just wondering who you and your sister are, and where exactly does your sister live?" After saying that, he walked up the mountain with a face full of disbelief. "I'll let you know when I get the chance. Tell me what's going on with this Baihua Palace." Yu Qianqiu followed. Baihua sect was founded not too long ago, less than 200 years ago. Speaking of which, it has something to do with supporting Immortals Island. Baihua sect's sect leader, Baihua Fairy, was originally the daughter of the previous island lord of supporting Immortals Island. Unexpectedly, she married Yan Bugui, the son of the previous palace lord of the number 1 demonic sect, the 10,000 Demons. It caused quite a bit of trouble at the time. On one side was the number 1 righteous sect, and on the other side was the number 1 demonic sect. Under the pressure from both sides, the 2 sect leaders expelled the couple from their sects, and they both stepped down from their positions. It was here that the couple established their sect, establishing Baihua Palace. Baihua Palace can be considered as an anomaly in the cultivation world. You can't say that it's righteous, nor can you say that it's demonic. Yet, both the righteous and demonic sects have to give it some face. Because of this, the 100 Flowers Valley where Baihua Palace is located has become a trading ground for the cultivation world. Both the righteous and demonic sects don't dare to cause any trouble here, and each goes about their own business. Don't you think it's strange? Hee hee. That's interesting. I'll have to take a good look. Yu Qianqiu laughed. The 2 of them chatted as they walked, winding their way into the depths of the mountain mist. The thick mist in the mountain was very strange, it didn't disperse even when the wind blew. The 2 of them stopped in front of the thick mist. Guan Yu took out a jade archive and imbued it with his true qi. The jade archive shot out a beam of white light towards the depths of the mist. The thick mist immediately roiled, gradually parting to reveal a path. Guan Yu instructed, "Don't run around. Just follow the path." The 2 of them walked along the path, and the mist behind them slowly closed up again. Yu Qianqiu was secretly amazed. Even the most advanced technology in his past life would have a hard time achieving this, right? Not long after, a city gate that wasn't too big appeared in front of them. Several cultivators armed with weapons stood guard at the gate. The cultivators glanced at the two of them, but didn't say anything. However, Guan Yu pulled Yu Qianqiu over and said, "Fellow Taoists, this is my friend's first time here. He needs 100 flowers entrance token." A cultivator sitting behind a table glanced at Yu Qianqiu, then flipped open the booklet on the table. He picked up a brush and asked, "Name? Which sect?" "Yu Qianqiu. I'm a loose cultivator with no sect or sect." Yu Qianqiu answered unhurriedly. Before coming here, Guan Yu had already informed him. Of course, he couldn't possibly say that he was on Quansung's disciple. 100 flowers entrance token, 1 mid-grade spirit stone, or 100 low-grade spirit stones, the cultivator said plainly. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He pretended to take out a mid-grade spirit stone from his robes and handed it over. Guan Yu's eyelid twitched when he saw this. Only then did he remember that the one thing this guy didn't lack was spirit stones. The cultivator took out a jade archive and let Yu Qianqiu imbue it with true qi. After that, the cultivator made a hand seal and shot a beam of white light at the jade archive. Once the jade archive was handed over to Yu Qianqiu, the matter was settled. "This registration is really simple," Yu Qianqiu muttered as he touched the jade archive in his hand. Guan Yu smiled. "It looks simple, but unless you personally hold the jade archive and imbue it with true qi, you won't be able to barge in." After passing through the city gate, Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately lit up. He really didn't expect to find such a good place in the depths of the mountains. Shops and taverns stood in great numbers, and hawkers could be seen everywhere. Cultivators dressed in all sorts of clothing came and went. Chapter 35. As the two strolled around the city, Yu Qianqiu looked around. Everything here was new to him. Guan Yu glanced at him. Although his anger had dissipated a lot after getting along with him for a while, he still couldn't help but take it to heart that his primordial spirit was controlled by someone else. He asked, "Are you going to take a look and leave, or are you going to stay here for a few days?" Yu Qianqiu was full of interest. He nodded and said, "Why do you want to leave when you just arrived?" "Stay a few more days. You're familiar with this place, where do you think is a good place to stay?" Guan Yu inadvertently smiled and said, "Come with me." The two walked forward and passed by a big square. There were many people setting up all kinds of stalls. Guan Yu brought him to the front of an inn. Yu Qianqiu looked around and discovered that the inn in front of him was probably the most imposing one he had seen so far. The signboard above the entrance read 100 Flowers House. He didn't think too much about it and followed them in. As soon as they entered, a waiter came over and greeted them enthusiastically. "Two guests, are you going to eat or stay?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the waiter and found that he was also Qi training level 7. Guan Yu went to the front of the counter and knocked, calling out, "Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms." The fat man, who was busy at the counter, hurried over. The fat man smiled and said, "The best room costs 10 mid-grade spirit stones a day, and 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones. May I know how long the 2 of you would like to stay?" "How many days?" Guan Yu turned and asked. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while, then he frowned and said, "Are you kidding me? 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day. Disciples from normal sects can't even afford a day's stay even with half a year's worth of spirit stones?" The fat shopkeeper said, "Little brother, I'm afraid this is your first time here. Our 100 Flowers House was opened by the 100 Flowers Palace, and it's also the best inn in the entire 100 Flowers Valley. If you stay here, you can rest in peace. No matter if it's the righteous Tao or the devil Tao, not many would dare to cause trouble here. Therefore, 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day is definitely worth it." Humph. If no one dares to come and cause trouble, doesn't that mean there are still people who dare to come and cause trouble? Yu Qianqiu muttered. When he saw the manager's expression change, He thought about how it wasn't beneficial for him to offend the members of the Flower Palace since he'd just arrived here, so he could only change his words. Then I'll stay for a day first. The shopkeeper's expression immediately relaxed, and he said with a smile, then I'll give the two of you 2 superior rooms? Yu Qianqiu nodded and pretended to put his hand into his empty lapel. He took out 2 handfuls of spirit stones and placed them on the counter. When the shopkeeper saw that he was able to grab 2 large handfuls of spirit stones from his flat clothes, he couldn't help but stare at him strangely. Yu Qianqiu's heart trembled, and he thought to himself that he would have to buy a storage bag to show off. After the shopkeeper registered, he called the waiter to bring the 2 of them upstairs. Yu Qianqiu inadvertently glanced at the strange smile on Guan Yu's face. He was slightly startled, and he immediately understood what was going on. I was wondering why he brought me to such an expensive place. So it turns out that he has a problem with me. Damn it. Do you want me to lose some money? This isn't a good sign, and I have to put it out in time. The place that he spent a lot of money to stay in was indeed different. The items and furnishings in the room were really good. When he opened the window, he saw the square. Looking at the bustling square, Yu Qianqiu was in a good mood. The haze of being schemed against by Guan Yu had also lightened a little. The market of the cultivation world. Let's see what good things they have. Yu Qianqiu muttered a few words, and he slowly walked out of the inn. He walked in the market with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the vendors around him. If one didn't know the situation, who would know that this was the cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu slowly walked from stall to stall, but he didn't find many things that he recognized. When he arrived in front of a stall, he discovered that it was very quiet, completely different from the bustling surroundings. Suddenly, he saw that the table was filled with all kinds of talismans. He couldn't help but stop and ask, "Fellow Taoist, what are these used for?" The stall owner hurriedly stood up, pointed at the talismans, and introduced, "These are smoke talismans. When you encounter danger, they can be used to escape. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 10 of them. These are fire talismans. When you throw one out, it can ignite a 1-meter-tall flame within a 3-meter radius. It can last for 10 breaths of time. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 1. These are arrow talismans. Within a 300-meter radius, it can hit anything. It can penetrate a 1-foot-thick brick wall. 2 low-grade spirit stones for 1. These are Vajra talismans." The more Yu Qianqiu listened, the brighter his eyes became. These were simply good things that were necessary for murder and arson. He couldn't help but carefully size up the stall owner in front of him. He was a young man in his early 20s, a level 8 aura refining cultivator. "Fellow Taoist, do you want to buy them? If you buy more, you can get a lower price," the young cultivator sincerely asked. Yu Qianqiu smiled and asked, "Did you make all these yourself?" The young cultivator nodded and said, "I made them myself. This is a secret technique passed down in my family. If it wasn't for my lack of cultivation and the fact that I can't make more powerful talismans, I wouldn't have been reduced to selling these low-level talismans to make a living." Yu Qianqiu smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Don't you have any relatives in your family?" The young man sadly lowered his head and slightly shook it. "I want to buy them, but I don't know how effective they are," Yu Qianqiu said with a bit of hesitation. The young cultivator became a bit anxious and said, "Fellow Taoist, are you afraid that the talismans I make won't be effective because of my young age? If you don't believe me, we can find a remote place and try it." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and muttered, "Then let's find a place and try it. If the effect is really good, then I want all of them. Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment." Hearing that he wanted all the talismans if the effect was good, the young cultivator quickly packed up his stall and led Yu Qianqiu to the outskirts of the small town. Yu Qianqiu looked around and found that it was really remote. He nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Fellow Taoist, try a few talismans." The young cultivator immediately took out a few different talismans from his bag and displayed them one by one in front of him. The effect was really good. Yu Qianqiu was very happy and couldn't help but feel strange and asked, "I see that your stall is deserted. It seems like there isn't even anyone looking. Could it be that the talismans you make are so unattractive? The young cultivator slowly lowered his head and replied honestly, "This is the first day I've set up a stall here." Many people were very enthusiastic when they first saw the talismans, but once they heard that I made them, they didn't want to buy them. Because talismans are usually made by people with higher cultivation, so. His voice lowered. Yu Qianshou understood what he meant and thought that this unlucky child was too honest. Couldn't he just say that it was his father or master who made them? Fellow Taoist, just treat it as helping me. You saw the power of my talismans earlier. Talismans of the same level aren't any weaker than others. If you buy more, I will definitely give you the lowest price. Otherwise, I won't even be able to pay for tomorrow's stall. The young cultivator said in a pleading tone. All right. I want all of them. Yu Qianshou patted his shoulder and said as he looked around. The young cultivator happily nodded his head. However, he heard the buyer pat his shoulder and say, "I want you too." Before he could react, he felt his vision blur. Chapter 36. Yu Qianshou looked around again, walked back with his hands behind his back, and murmured, "Young man, follow me from now on. I promise you'll eat and drink well every day." Someone in my previous life said it well. What's the most expensive thing in this century? Talent. Damn it. Only today did I realize I have the potential to be a talent scout. What a pity. He wandered back to the market, saw the young cultivator's empty stall, and couldn't help but smile. He continued to wander between the stalls. Fellow Taoist. Where can I buy a storage bag? Yu Qianshou finally met a cultivator that he could confirm was of a lower level than him, and asked him. The cultivator smiled and said, "Storage bags are relatively high-grade items, you can't buy them from the stalls. You'll have to go to the surrounding stalls to find them." Yu Qianshou looked around at the well-decorated stalls, and cupped his hands in thanks. Passing through the square, he looked at the stalls one by one, and found that the items here were clearly marked, but the prices were indeed not comparable to the stalls outside, and some were even scarily expensive. After walking through a few stalls, he didn't find any storage bags, and under the guidance of others, he finally found a shop called Hidden Secrets Pavilion, and indeed found the storage bag he wanted to buy. The shopkeeper inside greeted enthusiastically, "Fellow Taoist, what would you like to buy?" Yu Qianshou looked around and said, "I want to buy a storage bag." The shopkeeper laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist, you've come to the right place. Our sex storage bags are famous in the cultivation world. They are durable, and one can be used for 100 or 200 years without a problem. How big do you want? Our store has storage bags that can hold up to 3 rooms. What's the price?" "Forget it, just give me the cheapest one." Yu Qianshou said, he was just using it for show anyway. There was no need to waste money. No matter how rich he was, he wouldn't do what that prodigal did. The shopkeeper was slightly stunned. This was the first time he met someone who spoke so straightforwardly, and said with a slightly embarrassed smile, "The cheapest one is naturally the one with a room. It's 1 high-grade spirit stone." 1 high-grade spirit stone? So expensive. "Shopkeeper, you didn't lie to me, did you?" Yu Qianshou exclaimed. The shopkeeper didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fellow Taoist must be joking. This shop has been in business for hundreds of years and storage bags have always been sold at this price. If you don't believe me, you can go out and ask around. Forget it. Since it's a time-honored brand, there's no need to ask. Give me one. After saying that, he took out a high-grade spirit stone. After receiving the storage bag, Yu Qianshou still mumbled, "Such a small bag actually costs a high-grade spirit stone." After hanging the bag on his waist, he didn't even need to look to know that it was a cultivator. After leaving the Hidden Secret Pavilion, Yu Qianshou continued to stroll around one shop after another. He discovered one thing, and that was that almost all of the famous sects in the cultivation world had a shop here. He wondered if there was a shop owned by Anquangsung. After strolling around, he finally saw Anquangsung's logo in front of a shop. He didn't know what Anquangsung had for sale, and what was on sale inside. He wanted to go in, but he was afraid of bumping into someone he knew. He shook his head, safety first. It was better not to go in. Junior Marshal's sister. Come here quickly. Our Kwangsung shop is here. Yu Qianqiu didn't walk far when he suddenly heard a familiar voice, and he turned to look. Hey! The world was really small, there would be no meeting without enmity. It was really an old acquaintance, the direct grandson of Kwangsung's sect leader, Lu Zhengguang. He didn't know who that Junior Marshal sister was, but he felt that her back was somewhat familiar. After thinking for a while, he resisted the urge to go over and mock Lu Zhengguang. Although this was 100 Flower Palace's territory, and no one dared to fight, he couldn't beat him. Running over to show off his tongue wasn't something a hero would do. After thinking about it, it would be better to wait until he had the strength to beat someone up in the future. The mountains didn't change, and the rivers flowed. There would always be a time when he met him and took care of him. After strolling around the stalls for a while, he bought a bunch of things that he didn't know if they were useful or not. In any case, after buying things that he was interested in, the sky gradually darkened, and he slowly walked back to 100 Flower House. When he walked to Guan Yu's room, he found that Guan Yu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He couldn't help but sigh. This was the sorrow of refining Qi level 10. If you couldn't break through to the foundation building stage, then what was the point of cultivating? It was no different from eating and waiting for death. Yun Chang, wake up. This boss will take you to eat and drink. Yu Qianqiu used his foot to wake Guan Yu up. The two went downstairs of 100 Flower House and ordered a bunch of food. Looking at the table full of food, Yu Qianqiu ordered whatever was good. He might be stingy with other things, but he would never treat himself unfairly when it came to food. Drinking big bowls of wine and eating big pieces of meat, it felt so good. The stalls outside were lit up, and even the stalls in the square had become a night market. The two ate and drank, enjoying the scenery outside. Junior Marshal's sister, come quickly. This is the best inn in the 100 Flowers Valley, 100 Flower House. Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms. He heard that familiar voice again. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look. It was really a small world for enemies. It was that guy Lu Zhengguang again, leaning on the counter to pick a room. Forget it, I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to look away, a young girl walked in the door, and he couldn't look away. It was none other than the woman he was most familiar with in Kwangsung, Chu Ping. As Chu Ping looked around and sized up 100 Flower House, she also saw that familiar face near the window. Chu Ping couldn't believe it. She thought to herself, am I seeing things? Isn't he dead? The two just looked at each other. Yu Qianqiu pouted and gestured at Lu Zhengguang. He put a finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Chu Ping's face immediately lit up, and her eyes showed unconcealable excitement. The other party's actions undoubtedly proved his identity. She looked at Lu Zhengguang and knew what he was referring to. She nodded slightly. The two booked a room and were brought upstairs by the staff. On the way upstairs, Chu Ping couldn't help but look at him again. Yu Qianqiu smiled and pointed at himself, then upstairs, telling her that he was also staying upstairs. Chu Ping walked up with light steps. Seeing that Lu Zhengguang had also gone upstairs, Yu Qianqiu felt a chill run down his spine. He actually dared to get a room with his chick. He must be tired of living. Then he remembered that Lu Zhengguang had booked 2 rooms, and he felt a little better. However, he still couldn't swallow his anger. Guan Yu used his chopsticks to knock on Yu Qianqiu's chopsticks. He smiled and said, "Boss, she's already upstairs. Are you still in a daze? Why? Have you fallen for her?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him. At this time, a guest at the table next to them turned around and said, "Young man, you have to look carefully. That's Kwangsung's man. Kwangsung is now a big deal. You can't just mess with him." Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the guest behind him, then glanced at the simple dishes on the table. He smiled and said, "If you don't mind, please come over and have a drink with me. I have something to ask." The person was a slightly sloppy old man. He laughed and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." He stood up. Yu Qianqiu smiled and stretched out his hand. "Please." The old man came over and sat down. Yu Qianqiu poured him a glass of wine and toasted him together with Guan Yu. After the old man ate a few mouthfuls of food, Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, "I heard from you that Anquansung is now a big deal. I'm ignorant, so I hope you can enlighten me." Chapter 37. I can't say that I'm teaching you, I've only heard about it from the grapevine. However, in recent years, Anquansung has been stirring up chaos in the cultivation world. The cause of this matter seems to be the Phantom Palace robbing Anquansung of a batch of spirit stones. The old man said. Yu Qianqiu's eyelids twitched and asked, "Is the palace lord of Phantom Palace called 100 Charm Beauty?" "Yes." The old man nodded and sighed. Phantom Palace is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. But for some reason, they actually mustered a large force to rob Anquansung's spirit stones mine. Anquansung has been silent in the cultivation world for many years, and his disciples are said to be getting worse with each generation. But this matter completely angered Anquansung. Rumor has it that Anquansung's back mountain has more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. This is more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. Looking at the entire righteous and devil Dao, how many sects can take out such a number? These people brought nearly 100 nascent soul stage elders to attack the Demon Illusion Palace. In just half a day, the Demon Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Path, was removed from the list. The palace master and several elders were severely wounded and disappeared. So powerful. Guan Yu said in shock. Yu Qianqiu didn't have much of an idea of the so-called strength of the various sects in the cultivation world, but he didn't expect that the righteous Dao, which is ranked 6th, would attack the devil Dao, which is ranked 5th in less than half a day. After staying in Anquansung for so long, he only knew that Anquansung was ranked 6th. As for how strong the 6th was, he was completely clueless. However, the Phantom Palace was also quite unlucky. They wanted to rob spirit stones, but they didn't manage to do so. All the spirit stones went into other people's pockets. In the end, they brought disaster upon themselves. It was just a pity that the beautiful palace mistress was gone. He wondered how she was doing now. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly at the thought of the huge pile of spirit stones in his hands, and the food and drinks in front of him were all exchanged with those spirit stones. This Anquansung is really amazing. Not only the Phantom Palace, but also some of the small devil sects that have offended Anquansung in recent years have all been eradicated. Anquansung's series of actions were truly amazing. The balance of power in the entire cultivation world has been completely broken. I'm afraid that this rare peace in the cultivation world will set off another storm. The old man shook his head. He ate a mouthful of food and drank a glass of wine. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu and teased, "That's why I told you not to provoke Anquansung." "Of course not. I just took a second glance at him because he's so pretty." Yu Qianqiu replied awkwardly. Seeing Guan Yu and the old man laughing wretchedly, he couldn't help but change the topic and asked, "Senior, you have an extraordinary appearance. May I ask which sect are you from?" The smile on the old man's face froze. He touched his face and looked at himself. He said, "You're such a hypocrite. This is the first time I've heard someone say that I have an extraordinary appearance." Yu Qianqiu quickly said, "I'm talking about inner qualities, inner qualities." Guan Yu laughed quietly at the side. "Oh. It seems that this old man is ignorant and inexperienced. It turns out that you can use extraordinary appearance to describe inner qualities. Forget it. I won't argue with you because of the good wine and dishes. This old man is 10,000 demons Qiu Yuan." The old man said indifferently. Guan Yu was shocked and said, "You're from the number 1 devil sect, 10,000 demons? Why? This old man is from 10,000 demons. What's wrong with that? Qiu Weiyuan said as he glanced at Yu Qianqiu. He felt strange. He had noticed that this young man in front of him was a cultivator, but he couldn't see through his cultivation. This was really strange. Could it be that this young man's cultivation was higher than his? Yu Qianqiu didn't know what Qiu Weiyuan was thinking. He didn't mind which sect 10,000 demons belonged to. To him, the so-called devil sect was similar to the mafia. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Qiu. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you." Qiu Weiyuan's face twitched and said, "What are you talking about? Have you heard of this old man's name?" This old man is so stubborn. He knows that I'm just being polite, but he doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Let's not talk about it. Let's drink and eat." After eating and drinking, the two of them politely sent Qiu Weiyuan out of Hundred Flowers' house. After that, Yu Qianqiu wanted to go upstairs to meet his goddess sister. However, he was stopped by Guan Yu and wanted to go to the night market. He didn't have the mood to do that, but it was still early. Lu Zhenguang might still be with Chu Ping, so he listened to Guan Yu and the two of them strolled around with full stomachs. Guan Yu suddenly saw the pouch on Yu Qianqiu's waist. His eyes lit up and he said, "I've never used a storage pouch. I want one too." "Oh. Go buy one then. I'll just walk around here. Come back and find me." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Guan Yu stretched out his hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what?" "Spiritual stones to buy a storage pouch." "Damn. You live and eat from me. Don't you think it's too much to ask for pocket money from me? Didn't you say you'll be my boss and let me follow you? Also, the spiritual stones I have are not enough to buy a storage pouch. You're not so stingy as a boss, right? You have so many." Yu Qianqiu quickly interrupted, "All right, stop yelling. I'll give it to you." He pretended to take out a high-grade spiritual stone from his storage pouch. Guan Yu took the spiritual stone and shook his head, "It's not enough. Give me more. The Hundred Flowers Valley has a lot of exotic flowers and plants. I want to buy some seeds for your sister." "Buy a gift for my sister? Don't tell me you like my sister. I advise you to give up on this idea. If she's not happy, you'll be in trouble." Yu Qianqiu said suspiciously. "Don't let your imagination run wild. Didn't you say your sister likes flowers and plants? Do you want me to learn from her?" Guan Yu said. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He remembered that he did say that to him. It turned out that he was reaping what he sowed. He took out a handful of spiritual stones with a pained expression and gritted his teeth. "You really don't know the cost of daily necessities. Go back after you're done. I'm not going to shop anymore." He turned around and left. His good mood was ruined by Guan Yu. Which room is Chu Ping staying in? Yu Qianqiu paced back and forth in the hallway of the upper room of Hundred Flowers Valley. He just asked the shopkeeper downstairs, but the shopkeeper told him with a smile that he couldn't tell him. Just looking at Chu Pinger made people think of her beautiful figure. It really made people anxious. Without a choice, Yu Qianqiu looked around to make sure there was no one around. He tiptoed and pressed his face against the door to eavesdrop one by one. After 7 or 8 rooms, he heard Lu Zhenguang's fawning voice in front of one of the rooms. Seeing that the room was right next to his, he couldn't help but press his ear against it to hear what he was saying. Chapter 38. Inside the room, Chu Ping sat on both sides of a bright carved round table, quietly listening to Lu Zhenguang's flattering words. Looking at Lu Zhenguang's uncontrollable arrogant expression, she sighed in her heart. Was this still the senior brother Lu that she had dreamed of? In her impression, senior brother Lu had an elegant temperament, was gentle and kind, and was the dream lover of all the female disciples of An Kuang-sung. She didn't know when it started, but she had slowly grown tired of him. Looking at the face that she had once thought was the most handsome in the world, Chu Ping's eyes slowly moved away, and an ordinary face quietly appeared in her heart. In the forbidden pool, he was so scared that he hugged his clothes and hid. After that, he stopped a man with a bloody nose. At that time, the man was so scared that he couldn't speak properly. He looked so stupid in his panic. In the end, he actually got kicked down the mountain by him. But how could she blame herself for that? At that time, he was alone. She couldn't help but misunderstand, and it was a deep misunderstanding. She even had the urge to kill him. If it wasn't for the peeping in the forbidden cave, she didn't know how long she would have misunderstood. Elder Hao's death, that silent cry, and the blood he spat out, all showed his true feelings. Just think about it, how could such a person do such a dirty thing? Facing the sect leader without fear, facing him bluntly, how many disciples of An Kwansung could do that? Facing the scolding of trash, how many people could do that? If it wasn't for senior brother Lu's palm, An Kwansung probably wouldn't know that he was the kind of person who was willing to live in obscurity. Facing the song that was sung all over the world, he clearly knew that he was the one who composed it, but he didn't seek fame or profit, turning a deaf ear to it. If I didn't know, if I didn't expose it in front of you, would you continue to hide it like this? When I saw your helpless and miserable smile on the spirit stone mine, do you know how much my heart hurt? When I heard that you were killed by the demonic path in the spirit stone mine, do you know how many times I cried for you in the middle of the night? Do you know how happy I am to see you appear in front of me silently again today? He actually lived here as well. Could this be the so-called fate? Recalling Yu Qianzhou's sign language, Chu Ping'er smiled. As for what Lu Jingguang was saying, it could be said that he wasn't listening at all. Yu Qianzhou and Lu Jingguang, who were eavesdropping outside the door, naturally did not know what she was thinking. If Yu Qianzhou found out about it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Jingguang also noticed that his junior sister was a little distracted. He was slightly stunned and stopped talking. But Chu Ping'er was still in a trance. Lu Jingguang's face showed a hint of anger. As the direct grandson of the Azure Light sect leader, his status could be said to be extraordinary. Which of the female disciples in the sect did not secretly have a crush on him? The woman in front of him was also the same. He knew all of this, but he had a long-term ambition, wholeheartedly devoting himself to cultivation. When he was successful and famous, these female disciples would be at his mercy. Not so long ago, Chu Ping'er actually distanced herself from him. The way she looked at him also lost that strange look. Finally, she attracted his attention. Compared to the other female disciples, she was the most outstanding one. The most outstanding female disciple actually lost interest in him. This was undoubtedly a provocation to him, who was used to being high and mighty. How could he bear it? Therefore, he took the initiative to approach Chu Ping'er. But the result of his pursuit was that he seemed to be getting further and further away. Thinking of this, Lu Jingguang's facial muscles twitched. He took a deep breath and adjusted his emotions. He picked up the teacup on the table and touched it lightly. The sound of the teacup woke up Chu Ping'er from her trance. Lu Jingguang smiled and said gently, "Junior sister. The whole of An Kwansung knows my feelings for you. Don't tell me you don't know." Chu Ping'er hesitated for a moment and nodded lightly. This time, she followed Lu Jingguang out to play alone under the persuasion of Grandmaster Lu Wanxian. Before she came, Grandmaster had already made it clear that he hoped that she and Lu Jingguang could become cultivation partners. Due to the pressure from Grandmaster, she was already prepared to yield. What else could she do if she didn't yield? In An Kwansung, there were some things that a lowly disciple like her could not decide. But she never expected to meet Senior Uncle Yu, who should have been dead a long time ago. "Here. Bastard, you really want to woo my girl? How could you say such a disgusting confession? I'm so angry. My dear fairy sister, for the sake of the next generation of the cultivation world, you must hold your ground." Outside the door, Yu Qianzhou listened to her and cursed under his breath. Seeing that Chu Ping'er was unmoved, Lu Jingguang frowned and took out a long jade archive. He said, "Junior sister. Take a look at this." Chu Ping'er reached out and took it. Turning it over and over, she said doubtfully, "It looks very ordinary." It's neither too long nor too short. I can't tell what's so special about it. Outside the door, Yu Qianzhou's expression changed. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't defeat Lu Jingguang, he would have kicked the door open to see what the adulterous couple was up to. He thought to himself, Lu Jingguang, don't tell me you've even taken out the tool to carry on the family line. How *king shameless. What he heard next made him heave a sigh of relief. Junior sister. This jade archive is no ordinary item. I've heard that 3,000 years ago, there was a pill grandmaster in the cultivation world, right? This is the pill formula that countless generations of the pill grandmaster have painstakingly compiled. Lu Jingguang said. Ah. Pill formula. Chu Ping'er stared at the jade archive in her hand and exclaimed, is this the pill grandmaster who used to be the #1 sect of the righteous path for countless years? Wasn't it said that they were destroyed by the combined forces of the devil path 3,000 years ago? How could something that belonged to them fall into your hands? It was no wonder that Chu Ping'er was so shocked. Pill formulas were the most precious things in the cultivation world. A good pill formula was enough to set off a bloodbath in the cultivation world. Although absorbing the spiritual energy contained within spirit stones could increase one's cultivation, for those who had reached a certain level of cultivation, spirit stones weren't very useful. Things were different with a good pill formula. With a good pill formula, consuming one pill would be equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation, or even several years. For cultivators, advancing from one stage to another was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just like how Yu Qianzhou needed a foundation building pill to advance from the Qi training stage to the foundation building stage. Although foundation building pills were precious in the cultivation world, almost every sect had the pill formula to refine them. But what about pills that could allow one to advance from the core bearing stage to the nascent soul stage, and the tribulation stage? Although every sect had their own secret recipes and treasured them like treasures, the effects of consuming them depended on one's luck. It seemed that only a small portion of people were lucky. From this, it could be seen how precious a good pill formula was in the cultivation world. It was definitely not inferior to a good transcendent artifact. The pill grandmaster was one of the cultivation sects that excelled in this field. It was rumored that once their disciples reached a certain level of cultivation, they would have a 30% chance of breaking through after consuming the pill. Do not underestimate this 30%. If Kuang-tsung had 100 original infant stage cultivators, and 30% of them broke through to the tribulation stage, what would that mean? That would be an additional 30 tribulation stage cultivators. This kind of probability was something that none of the sects dared to think about. Chapter 39. Chu Ping'er's surprised expression made him very satisfied. Lu Jingguang said a little proudly, my grandfather obtained it by chance when he annihilated a small devil sect some time ago. The different levels of pill formulas on it were enchanted with different levels of restriction. It's funny that the devil sect couldn't break the restriction, so they threw it aside for so many years. Hee hee. The first level of restriction has been broken by my grandfather. Some of the pill formulas inside are really extraordinary. Chu Ping'er frowned and said, this is the spoils of war of the sect, and such an important treasure. It should belong to the sect. Why did the sect head give it to you? When she asked this question, she actually suspected that the Lu grandfather and grandson wanted to keep this treasure for themselves. Of course we have to hand it over. Who dares to keep this thing for themselves? Even if they keep it for themselves, who can rely on their own ability to gather all the medicinal ingredients on the pill formulas? But my grandfather said that whoever gives this thing to the sect will be given a great credit. My grandfather is already the sect head of Kuang-tsung, so... Lu Jingguang smiled meaningfully. Looking at Chu Ping'er, he said slowly, so my grandfather said that this thing should be given to the sect by me. Then the great credit will naturally fall on me. The purpose of coming out this time is to find a very good reason to hand this thing over to the sect. Otherwise, I won't even go out of the mountain gate of Kuang-tsung. Taking this thing out will only arouse suspicion. Chu Ping'er was slightly shocked. First of all, the dignified sect head of Kuang-tsung would actually do such a thing. It was simply unbelievable. Second, he even told such a secret to her. Wasn't that forcing her to obey him? Yu Qianqiu, who was outside the door, pricked up his ears. Something that could make the Lu grandfather and grandson spend so much effort on it was definitely not an ordinary treasure. He didn't expect this secret to be accidentally heard by him. Yu Qianqiu didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he looked at the two ends of the corridor. Seeing that it was still quiet, he put his ear to it again. In fact, if it weren't for the inexplicable special effect of the golden bead, how could he eavesdrop on Lu Jingguang's conversation with his cultivation? He would have been discovered long ago. However, although this merit is great, I am not willing to enjoy it alone. As long as Junior Marshall's sister agrees to be my Tao companion and cultivate together, I am willing to give you half of the merit. When I hand it over, I will report to the sect that this treasure was discovered by both of us together. What do you think, junior sister? Lu Jingguang threw out a condition that he thought was very attractive. Chu Ping'er was in a dilemma. Ever since she saw Yu Qianqiu downstairs, she had already given up on the idea of dual cultivation with Lu Jingguang. But now that Lu Jingguang had told her everything, she had no choice but to agree. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Junior Marshall's sister. Can't I move you with my sincerity? Lu Jingguang saw that she was still hesitating. His tone was a little unhappy, and his words were already mixed with threats. Chu Ping'er naturally heard it. She bit her lips and said with a smile, Senior Marshal brother, such a great merit suddenly appeared and fell on me. My mind is a little confused. Can you let me have some peace and quiet? I will definitely give Senior Marshal brother an answer tomorrow. Okay. Then I won't disturb Junior Marshal's sister's rest. Lu Jingguang stood up and replied readily. Chu Ping'er stood up and said, Senior Marshal brother, take care. Lu Jingguang nodded. His eyes swept over the latter's beautiful face and full chest, and then glanced at the gums in the room. In his mind, he could already imagine Junior Marshal's sister moaning under him tomorrow. He didn't think that Junior Marshal's sister could refuse the temptation he threw out. He walked out with a smile on his face. As soon as Lu Jingguang returned to his room and closed the door next to Chu Ping'er's quietly opened. Chu Ping'er sighed. Just as she was about to close the door, Yu Qianqiu stood in front of her with a smile. Chu Ping'er's eyes lit up. Before she could react, Yu Qianqiu had already squeezed in. In the process, he smelled a faint fragrance. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Based on his experience from his previous life, Chu Ping'er was still a virgin. Marshal Uncle Yu. Chu Ping'er closed the door and locked it. She held back her surprise and greeted. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, no need to be so polite. We haven't seen each other for a long time. After saying that, he sat down. Ever since we parted ways at the Spirit Stone Mine in Anquansung, it's been a year since I last saw you, Marshal Uncle. Chu Ping'er said faintly and sat opposite him. We will naturally meet again if we are fated. Look, aren't we meeting each other now? Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily. I heard that Marshal Uncle was killed by the Devil Dao in the Spirit Stone Mine. The whole of Anquansung thought that you were really dead. I didn't expect to meet Marshal Uncle here. That's right. Since Marshal Uncle is fine, why didn't you return to Anquansung? Since Chu Ping'er had doubts in her heart, she naturally had to ask. As she spoke, she got a clean cup, poured some tea, and placed it on the opposite side. Fortunately, I am lucky. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to see you again. Shaking his head and sighing, Yu Qianqiu drank the tea in one gulp. He said, answer Anquansung. If I had really returned to Anquansung, I'm afraid that not even my bones could be found. Do you think the sect master and Wu Baoru would let me go? Rather than losing my life, I would rather live a carefree life as a loose cultivator. Chu Ping'er thought that what he said was true. If she had stayed in Anquansung, she was afraid that she would not have had a good ending. After pouring another cup of tea for him, she slowly asked, Marshal Uncle, how have you been wandering outside for more than a year? So, I can be considered to be doing okay. Chu Ping'er looked at Yu Qianqiu. She didn't quite believe it. In the cultivation world, if a loose cultivator didn't have a high cultivation and didn't have the protection of a sect, how many of them could have a good life? He was still the same. He would bear all the pain alone. She just didn't know when she would be able to see him again after this. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, "Martial uncle, are you really not going to return to Anquansung?" "I'm not going back, Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked, "You won't tell Anquansung that I'm still alive, will you?" Chu Ping'er was stunned. She felt as if her heart had been pierced by a needle. She then bit her lips and said slowly after a long time, "Is Chu Ping'er so untrustworthy in Martial Uncle's eyes?" Damn! This girl was stimulated. That's not right. Why does it feel a little weird? Could it be that this girl has fallen in love with me? Thinking of this, he felt that his judgment was not wrong. He was ecstatic and secretly had a plan. He didn't dare to say anything to stimulate Chu Ping'er anymore. He quickly changed the topic and said, "Since I've left Anquansung, you don't need to call me Martial Uncle anymore. Call me by my name from now on. Let's be friends. By the way, can I call you Ping'er from now on?" After that, he drank the tea in front of him. Ping'er. What an intimate name. With this sentence, the hidden bitterness on Chu Ping'er's face disappeared without a trace. She stared at Yu Qianqiu affectionately with her eyes and nodded. Then, he stood up and filled the teapot with water. Yu Qianqiu was now 100% sure that Chu Ping'er was really interested in him. He raised his hand and touched his nose. A trace of a smile flashed across his face. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the hand that was pouring the tea. He could clearly feel that the other party's hand was stiff, but she didn't pull it back. She still let him hold it. What was he trying to do? Chu Ping'er's face was red. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. She didn't dare to look at him directly. Chapter 40. GGA. Her little hands were so soft and smooth. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased with himself. He put down the teapot from her hands and said gently, "Ping-er. Don't move. There's something in your hair. Let me help you remove it." As he spoke, he stood up and slowly pulled Chu Ping over. As Yu Qianqiu's hand reached out to her hair, a strand of grass appeared in her hair as if by magic. Yu Qianqiu gently plucked it and placed it in front of her eyes. He immediately let go of her hand. So there really was something in my hair. I thought. Chu Ping was secretly ashamed of herself for thinking in the wrong direction. Her face was so red that it couldn't get any redder. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would slightly bend down and put his mouth next to her ear and softly say, "Ping-er. Why is your body so fragrant?" Chu Ping's body trembled. Her delicate ear was disturbed by the hot breath coming from the man in front of her. She immediately felt unbearable. Especially when she smelled the man's body odor at such a close distance, her body felt a little weak. She wanted to step back, but her legs seemed to have no strength at all. She couldn't move at all. Her heart was beating so hard that even she could hear it. "Ping-er. You smell so good. I want to hug you. Can I?" Yu Qianqiu whispered softly in her ear. His lips were almost touching her bright red earlobe. Yu Qianqiu's words were like a devil's whisper. Chu Ping unexpectedly responded with an "N." The first to strike has the upper hand. The last to strike will suffer. Little sister, big brother is coming. This thought flashed through Yu Qianqiu's mind. He was very proud of himself. The fairy sister that he had coveted for a long time was about to fall into his hands. This happiness came too suddenly and too unexpectedly. Even he didn't think it would happen. The hot breath from his mouth incessantly stimulated the other party's ears. His hands gently passed through the slender waist that was wrapped in silk and slowly hugged it. He slowly pulled it over and gradually hugged that curvy and fragrant body. When the two bodies were glued together, Chu Ping'er's eyes blurred as she let out a moan. How bouncy. Yu Qianqiu was stimulated. His mouth and hands started to get naughty. Chu Ping'er's body also twisted uneasily and hugged him. Feeling that Chu Ping was slowly responding, Yu Qianqiu also became aroused. He murmured, "Ping-er, I want you." He didn't know how to control his hands anymore. Ah! Chu Ping'er couldn't help but cry out in pain. He immediately woke up and pushed Yu Qianqiu's chest with both hands. He panted and said, "Qianqiu. We can't do this. We can't do this. No. I want you right now." Yu Qianqiu said and wanted to stick to her again. Chu Ping'er used all her strength to resist and almost begged, "Qianqiu. I beg you, we really can't do it here. Senior Marshal brother Lu Jingguang also lives here." Hearing Lu Jingguang's name, Yu Qianqiu's head that was clouded by lust also woke up. Now was indeed not the time. Let's not talk about whether Chu Ping'er would agree or not. He had already made up his mind to steal Lu Jingguang's treasure. He couldn't delay this matter. Thinking of this, he could only let go of Chu Ping'er helplessly. Chu Ping'er gently leaned on Yu Qianqiu's body. Her face was still red, as if she was happy that Qianqiu could listen to her. She listened to his strong heartbeat and said slowly, "Qianqiu, don't worry. Ping'er's body will only belong to you in this lifetime. Next time. Ping'er will definitely give it to you next time." Yu Qianqiu hugged her and responded helplessly. However, his hands were still taking advantage of her body. Not long after, Chu Ping'er let out a soft moan. She was a little aroused by his restless hands again. She quickly grabbed his hand and held it in her own. She snuggled in his arms and asked softly, "Qianqiu. Do you think I'm a little frivolous for agreeing so quickly?" "No, I like it." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he sat on the stool and pulled Chu Ping'er over to sit on his lap. "Then do you like me?" Chu Ping'er turned her head and looked at him. "Silly. Needless to say, of course I do." "Then when did you start to like me?" "Today?" Chu Ping'er asked without blinking. "No. Since the first day I came to this world, I like you. I often dream of you." Chu Ping'er clenched her fist and hit him. She said coquettishly, "You're so annoying. I'm happy that you lied to me. I want to hear the truth." "You really want to hear it?" "Yes." Yu Qianqiu saw that she didn't believe him even if he told the truth. He could only say half the truth, "AI. Then I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I saw you naked in the forbidden pool of Anquangsung, I started to like you." "What?" Chu Ping'er exclaimed. Her half-lying body suddenly sat up. She couldn't believe that Yu Qianqiu really saw her naked. Anger gradually appeared on her face. She was cheated. Her chest rose and fell violently due to her rapid breathing. "I love you," Yu Qianqiu said softly. Whether it was the previous life or this life, these words were very lethal. Chu Ping'er immediately fell into his arms. He smiled and said, "Ping'er. Why are you so excited? I didn't mean to see it. I originally wanted to go to the stone cave in the forbidden area. Who knew that there would be a beautiful blue light sect female disciple who took off her clothes? AI. This must be heaven's will for us to be together." "You're still talking." Chu Ping'er bashfully punched him again. He had seen all the parts of her body that he shouldn't have seen. He had touched all the parts that he shouldn't have touched. There was only one last step left. What else could she do now? This was fate. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat just by looking. Yu Qianqiu laughed. Chu Ping'er immediately punched him a dozen times. Yu Qianqiu laughed and grabbed her hand. He said, "All right, Ping'er, don't mess around. I have something serious to ask you." Seeing that she finally became obedient, he asked again, "Ping'er, why did you follow Lu Jingguang to the 100 Flowers Valley this time?" Chu Ping'er pondered for a while and immediately told him everything that had happened, including the fact that Lu Zhenguang had the prescription. Yu Qianzhou listened carefully. When he heard that Chu Ping'er clearly told him the content of the conversation between her and Lu Zhenguang in the room, he compared it with what he had overheard outside. He found that there was nothing to hide. He immediately smiled with relief. Chapter 41. In fact, there were two reasons for his question just now. First, he wanted to know what Lu Zhenguang's jade butterfly formula looked like, so that he could avoid making a mistake. Secondly, he wanted to know if Chu Ping'er truly loved him wholeheartedly. If there was anything that she was deliberately hiding, if she was hiding something, Chu Ping would never expect Yu Qianzhou to treat her wholeheartedly. He was afraid that she would be thrown onto the bed, stripped naked, and raped on the spot. After that, he would abandon her and kill her. Yu Qianzhou would never be reluctant to part with her. It was not wrong to say that he was ruthless. Although he usually laughed and laughed, deep down, he was still the boss of the underworld in his previous life. Think about it, how many people could become the boss of the underworld from nothing? How many of them were good people? Chu Ping leaned against Yu Qianzhou, lying docilely in his arms. She probably never thought that she had just escaped from the gates of hell. Yu Qianzhou's joking face showed a rare gentle expression. His fingers gently stroked Chu Ping'er's beautiful hair. Ping-er. Don't go back to Anquangsung. Come with me. Now. Chu Ping paused and said, I also want to go with you, but how can I explain to my master? My master has always been very good to me. I'm afraid that he will be worried if I leave without a word. Your master is Lu Wanxin's disciple. I'm really worried about leaving you alone in Anquangsung. Moreover, Lu Zhenguang has ulterior motives towards you. Yu Qianzhou said worriedly. He. Chu Ping'er turned around and looked at him with a smile. What's wrong? Are you worried that I will be taken advantage of by Lu Zhenguang? Yu Qianzhou said solemnly, I'm not worried, I'm very worried. Both the grandfather and grandson of the Lu family are nothing good, and Anquangsung and that bunch of bullshit elders are all beasts in human clothing. I know that better than you do. You're just a little disciple of Anquangsung, how could you possibly defeat them? Although his words were not very pleasant to hear, Chu Ping'er knew that he was really worried about her. After a sweet smile, she said to him solemnly, Master has been very kind to me. I am an orphan. When I was very young, Master brought me up the mountain to cultivate. She has always treated me like her own daughter. Among all the female disciples, Master treats me the best. If I leave without saying anything, not only will Master worry, I will also feel very guilty. Is your master a man or a woman? Yu Qianzhou suddenly asked in an untimely manner. Woman, why are you asking this? Chu Ping'er asked curiously. Oh. Then I'm relieved. Chu Ping'er was stunned for a moment, but she immediately reacted. She punched him again and said, Why is your head filled with all these messed up things? Yu Qianzhou laughed. In fact, he really wanted to say, You're too pure. It was no wonder that he would have such a thought. In his previous life, he had been through a lot of dirty things. He had seen too many dark things. When he looked at things, it was inevitable that he would consider more negative things. He belonged to the kind of person who was more suspicious and didn't trust others easily. Sigh. Looks like I can't persuade you. Yu Qianzhou sighed softly and suddenly hugged Chu Ping'er. Ah. What are you doing? Chu Ping'er cried out in surprise and joy. Yu Qianzhou smiled calmly and said, Do you trust me? Chu Ping'er was as happy as a cat in Yu Qianzhou's arms and nodded. Yu Qianzhou was moved. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead lightly. Then he said, Ping'er, listen to me. Remember what I said. I agreed to let you go back to Anquangsung. It's not that I don't want you to stay. I really want you to stay, but I don't want you to be in a difficult position. If I see you in a difficult position, I will feel even worse than you. Do you understand? After you go back to Kwangsung, you must remember to protect yourself at all costs. As long as you still have me in your heart, treat it as protecting yourself for me. You must make yourself well. Pinger. Remember, no matter what happens in the future, I will definitely find you. Even if I die, my soul will find you and let you know that I'm here. I don't want you to die. Chu Pinger immediately covered his mouth and said with tears, I want you to come back to me alive. I will definitely live well and wait for you to come back to me. Yu Qianqiu smiled gently and said, as long as you can do it, I will definitely do it. No one can stop me. Pinger. You have to remember, our separation today is for a better reunion in the future. N. Chu Pinger nodded desperately with tears in her eyes. Seeing that she was crying, Yu Qianqiu wanted to ease the atmosphere. He put her down and said, I have something to ask of you. Pinger, will you agree? N. Chu Pinger said with tears in her eyes, as long as I can do it, I will agree to anything. Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly, this is something that you can do easily. I'm just afraid that you will not agree to it when the time comes. Do you not trust me that much? Chu Pinger was a little angry, but she suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu's face revealing a trace of a strange smile. She couldn't help being startled and said with slight apprehension, don't tell me you want me to do that thing with you again? I already said that it's not convenient for Lu Jingguang to live here. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He immediately understood what she was talking about. He secretly thought that this girl's awareness was too high. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, am I such a lowly person? Chu Pinger was so embarrassed that her face turned red. She stamped her feet and said, if it's not that thing, then say it. I will agree to it, okay? This is what you said, you can't go back on your words. Yu Qianqiu put his mouth next to her ear and said softly, my hand is a little itchy. As he said that, his hand had already slid down the smooth skin of a certain someone's collar. Chu Pinger's body trembled, but she didn't resist. She only heard her muttering, you still say that you're not a lowly person, but I've never seen someone more. Gradually, an uncontrollable moan came out of her mouth. Yu Qianqiu, who had succeeded in his plot, happily pulled out his hand and put it in front of his nose to smell it. He said, it smells so good. Chu Pinger was so embarrassed that she almost couldn't lift her face. Wait for me, I will go out for a while and come back soon. Yu Qianqiu seemed to suddenly think of something. After saying that, he opened the door and went out, then closed the door. Chu Pinger didn't know what he was going to do when he went out, so she hurriedly tidied up her collar that was loosened by that bad guy's hand. Yu Qianqiu came back very quickly. After he came in and closed the door, he took out a small exquisite bag and said with a smile, I just bought it, it's for you. Ah. It's a storage bag. What a beautiful storage bag, I have never used it before. Chu Pinger, who received the gift, was very happy. After playing with it for a while, she suddenly frowned and said, this thing is very expensive, it must be hard for you to be alone outside, why do you need to spend this money? Hee. As long as you like it, spending a little money is nothing. Your husband doesn't have anything else but money. In the storage bag, I have 100 high-grade spirit stones, 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. You can keep it on you, in case you need it when I am not here, Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. Chapter 42. The items in the storage pouch were just as Yu Qianqiu had said. Chu Pinger, who had used her divine sense to check, was shocked. She asked doubtfully, where did you get so many spirit stones? Yu Qianqiu smiled and didn't answer her directly. He just hugged her and said, take good care of yourself. Then he turned around and walked out. Chu Ping, reluctantly shouted, I'll wait for you. Yu Qianqiu didn't tell her that he was living next door. He didn't go back to his room either. He went straight to Guan Yu's room and pushed the door open. Guan Yu had returned and was fiddling with a lot of things on the table. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he nodded with a smile. It was a good feeling to have money to spend. Why do you have a woman's fragrance? Guan Yu's nose flared as he sniffed Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was worried and impatiently asked, "How long will it take to get to supporting Immortal Island from here? I want to go there as soon as possible." Guan Yu was startled and his expression sank. Yu Qianqiu would naturally use the supporting Immortal token to go to supporting Immortal Island. Once he used it, he would never have the chance to go back. However, his natal primordial spirit was in the hands of others. What could he do? He sighed and said, "There's a shop on supporting Immortal Island in the 100 Flowers Valley. They use flying artifacts to transport things every day. If you show the supporting Immortal token to the shopkeeper, they will naturally take you there." Yu Qianqiu pondered for a bit and had a plan. He patted Guan Yu's shoulder and sent him into his space without caring if he was happy or not. He also swept the things on the table into his space. Then, a long and thin pipe appeared in his hand. This was something he had bought outside. Today, when he was strolling in the market, a man suddenly pulled him to the side and asked if he wanted anything good. Yu Qianqiu asked him what it was, and the man pulled him to the side, took out the thing, and told him that it was called Fallen Immortal, and it was specially made to deal with cultivators. To put it bluntly, it was a sleeping gas specially made for cultivators. It was very effective against cultivators below the core formation stage. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. The two of them immediately ran into the wilderness and caught a few wild beasts to experiment. Sure enough, the effect was miraculous. Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he exclaimed that the man was a talent. In the end, he accidentally put the man into his own space. The two ends of the pipe had small holes sealed with wax, and there was a fuse halfway up the waist. Yu Qianqiu took out a flint and lit the fuse. The fuse dragged sparks as it drilled into the pipe. Then, the pipe made a light pop sound and he felt a slight warmth in his hand. Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction. He took it to the corridor and looked around to see that there was no one around. Then, he gently touched the door of Lu Jingguang's room and listened carefully to see if there was any movement inside. He unscrewed the wax seal on the two ends of the pipe and gently inserted one end into the crack of the door. He put the other end in his mouth and gently blew. Inside the room, Lu Jingguang was sitting cross-legged in meditation. With his cultivation, he had actually heard a little movement outside the door. He concentrated and didn't find anyone, so he didn't care. This was mainly because he was arrogant and had never suffered a loss in the cultivation world. Moreover, he had never heard of anyone from the righteous and devil Dao daring to cause trouble in the 100 Flowers Valley. A wisp of green smoke slowly floated out from the crack of the door and gradually filled the whole room. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Jingguang's nose slightly moved and he secretly wondered what was so fragrant. Then, he felt that the genuine qi in his body became heavy and slowed down. He frowned and opened his eyes to see the room filled with green smoke. Even though Lu Jingguang didn't have any experience, at this time, he also found that he had been tricked. He was shocked and just got up from the bed. He suddenly felt dizzy. He opened his mouth to shout, but before he could shout, his eyes suddenly went black and he fell to the ground with a bang. Yu Qianqiu had been guarding outside. He was not worried at all. Anyway, if he was discovered, he could hide in the golden bead. Hearing the sound of someone falling to the ground inside, he secretly said that he had succeeded. He put his palm on the door and exerted a little force. The bolt inside popped open. With his current level of cultivation, opening a door was a piece of cake. Moreover, in the cultivation world, this kind of door was just for show. Even if the door was bolted like this, it wouldn't be able to stop anyone. Only the sound of the bolt opening could alert the person inside. However, the person inside had already fainted. Pushing the door open, Yu Qianqiu quickly went inside. When he saw Lu Jingguang lying on the ground, he closed the door again. He walked straight over and without saying a word, lifted his leg and kicked the person lying on the ground. Feeling his unvented fire, he kicked a few more times, cursing as he kicked, "How dare you flirt with my girl? You're courting death." After feeling a little better, he took off the storage pouch on Lu Jingguang's waist and opened it. He released his divine sense to investigate. Sure enough, he found a jade archive that was exactly the same as the one Chu Ping had described. When he used his divine sense to investigate the jade archive, he found that the layers of restrictions inside were completely undetectable. Only the first layer was unlocked. He reckoned that it was the layer that Lu Changqing had unlocked. There was a whole bunch of strange medicinal names. Yu Qianqiu had never heard of any of them before. He couldn't tell whether the jade archive was real or fake. After storing the storage pouch into his dimensional space, he immediately searched around the room. He didn't even let go of the bedding on the bed. After confirming that there was nothing else hidden, he stripped off Lu Jingguang's clothes and carefully examined them piece by piece. However, he didn't find anything. This guy has soft skin and tender flesh. No wonder he dared to seduce my girl, Yu Qianqiu muttered as he looked at the naked Lu Jingguang on the ground. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of bringing trouble to Chu Ping, he would have killed Lu Jingguang right there and then. However, he was unwilling to do so. His gaze fell on Lu Jingguang's genitals. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and sneered. He glanced at the sword hanging by the bed and walked over to pull it out. He circled around the naked man on the ground and swung the sword in his hand at the genitals of Lu Jingguang's thighs. Blood splattered everywhere. Ping, I really don't trust this kind of person. I had no choice but to castrate him, Yu Qianqiu sighed. When he mentioned Chu Ping, his brows furrowed again. Lu Jingguang had only told Chu Ping about the pill formula. Now that it had been stolen and he had been castrated, the first person the Lu family's grandfather and grandson would suspect would be Chu Ping. This wouldn't do. Looking at Lu Jingguang's lower body bleeding all over the ground, Yu Qianqiu's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He smiled lightly and took a brush from the brush rack on the side. He dipped it in the blood on the ground and scribbled a few lines of words on the wall. Lu Changqing, I will take revenge for the extermination of my family in the future. I met your grandson by chance, so I will collect some interest first. After doing this, Yu Qianqiu walked out unhurriedly and closed the door. When he passed by Chu Ping's room, he resisted the urge to go in again. He walked out of the 100 Flowers house and went straight to the shops around the square. He had seen the shops of Fuxin Island when he was strolling around during the day, so he naturally had to go there now. When he walked into the market, he thought about how he didn't know when he would be able to come back again, so he looked at the items on the stalls as he walked. As long as he found something useful, he directly bought it and threw it into his storage bag. He didn't even care about the price. Chapter 43. Taoist friend, what do you want to buy? Our shop's magic tools and pills are famous in the cultivation world. Let me take a look first. Yu Qianqiu looked at the items on the shelves. Just as the shopkeeper said, Fuxian Island's shop should mainly sell magic tools and pills. After looking for a while, Yu Qianqiu asked the shopkeeper, Shopkeeper, are you in charge of this shop? The shopkeeper was stunned and didn't know why he asked that. He smiled and said, my sex elder is in charge here, but I can still make the decisions. Taoist friend, what do you want to buy? Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, I want to see your elder. Seeing that the shopkeeper was still hesitating, he added, I have something important to see your elder. While the shopkeeper was still muttering, a young man and woman with extraordinary looks came out of the house. Behind them was an old man. The shopkeeper smiled and greeted, young palace master, young lady. The young man and woman nodded. Which family's young palace master and young lady are they? Yu Qianqiu looked at the young man and woman. The young man had an extraordinary presence and the young lady was very beautiful, not inferior to Chu Ping. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but take a few more glances. The young man and woman glanced at Yu Qianqiu and didn't mind. Yu Qianqiu's appearance really didn't attract much attention. The young man and woman walked to the door and bowed to the old man behind them. Martial uncle, please stay. The old man nodded and said, go back and send my regards to your mother. The young man and woman said a few polite words and turned to leave. The old man also turned and walked into the house. Elder Chin. The shopkeeper shouted and walked to the old man. He said respectfully, Elder, this Daoist friend said he has something important to talk to you about. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu. Oh. The old man turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu. He sized him up and asked in confusion, Is there something you need from me, little brother? Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to put on any airs now. He hurriedly bowed and imitated the shopkeeper's greeting, Elder Chin. He then took out the immortal supporting token from his storage bag and handed it over. When Elder Chin saw what Yu Qianqiu took out, his eyelids twitched. He took it and examined it. He knew it was real and immediately said, Come with me. Yu Qianqiu respectfully followed him into the inner room. The shopkeeper also saw that item. As he looked at the two of them, he muttered, Is that an immortal supporting token? It's been a long time since I've heard of an outsider holding this thing. At daybreak, Yu Qianqiu followed a person out of the 100 Flowers Valley. This person was Elder Chin's disciple. His name was Chen Gingxing. He was in charge of transporting things between supporting Immortal Island and the 100 Flowers Valley. Today, he was ordered by his master to bring Yu Qianqiu back to supporting Immortal Island. The two of them walked out of the 100 Flowers Valley's grand formation. Chen Gingxing took out a small copper crane and threw it into the air after making a few hand seals. The copper crane grew with the wind and instantly turned into a big, lively immortal crane. It circled in the sky and slowly landed in front of the two of them. Chen Gingxing jumped onto the crane's back and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, Come on up. Yu Qianqiu immediately jumped on. The former made a hand seal and shouted, Rise. The big crane cried and flew into the sky. Yu Qianqiu wasn't paying attention and was almost thrown down. The crane circled twice and found the right direction to fly south. The speed of the crane was very fast. When people stood on it, the wind resistance was very strong. It almost blew them off. However, no matter how bad Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was, he could still stand steadily when he circulated his power. Chen Gingxing saw Yu Qianqiu's embarrassment and couldn't help but smile. He asked, Is this your first time riding a flying magic tool? Yes, I've never ridden it before. Yu Qianqiu didn't know how to address him, so he could only answer directly. Chen Gingxing seemed to know what he was thinking and said, Since you came with the supporting immortal token, you will be a disciple of the same sect in the future. Our supporting Immortal Island isn't like other sects where there are generations of disciples. Seniority is determined by strength. Qi refining cultivators call foundation establishment cultivators martial uncles, and so on. I'm a core formation cultivator, but I can't see through your cultivation. I wonder what stage your cultivation is at. Why didn't this damn Guan Yu tell me before? Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. I'm Qi refining level 10, so I have to call you martial ancestor Cheng. He didn't expect that his seniority in Angquangsung was so high, but now he was someone else's disciple. You don't have to be embarrassed. This is a very normal thing in our supporting Immortal Island. Maybe I'm your martial ancestor today, but in 2 years, I might have to call you martial uncle. Chen Gingxing smiled. Martial ancestor Cheng must be joking. How is that possible? Yu Qianqiu replied. Chen Gingxing was also a person who was easy to talk to. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. In his previous life, Yu Qianqiu took a plane and flew in the sky. However, anyone with a normal body could sit on a plane. People who didn't cultivate really couldn't sit on a plane. If you didn't sit in the cabin, you would know what it felt like to stand outside the plane. However, there were benefits too. The great rivers and mountains below could be seen clearly from the top. After flying for more than half a day, they couldn't see the land below. It was all vast ocean. Yu Qianqiu knew that they were about to reach supporting Immortal Island. As expected, not long later, an island appeared on the surface of the ocean. The island was surrounded by clouds and mist. Chen Gingxing smiled. Supporting Immortal Island is in front. When they flew closer, they realized that it looked like a small island from afar. However, when they looked closer, they couldn't tell how big it was. The red-crowned crane descended and its speed slowed down. When it was about to land, Qingqing sent out a finger seal from the depths of the clouds. The clouds opened up a path for the red-crowned crane to carry the two of them in. After passing through the clouds, Yu Qianqiu looked back. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. From the outside, it looked like there were clouds, but from the inside, there was nothing. It seemed like this was a formation to protect the island. Looking down, the pavilions and terraces really gave off the feeling of a paradise on earth. As expected of the number one sect of the righteous path. The grandeur of these buildings was much stronger than that of Anquangsung. The red-crowned crane landed on a plaza. The two of them jumped down. Qingqing invoked his arts to keep the red-crowned crane. He said, "Follow me." After saying that, he led Yu Qianqiu to the huge building in front of the plaza. Along the way, they met many people who greeted Qingqing. Yu Qianqiu saw a huge building with 3 floors from afar. On the board of the first floor, there were 3 golden words, Penglai Pavilion. After Qingqing spoke to the guard at the door, he brought him into the building. Once he entered, Yu Qianqiu almost fainted. It was like entering a government office building in his previous life. Even though it was an ancient building. There was an empty main hall in the middle of the first floor. On both sides, there were many smaller halls. The smaller halls also had small signs hanging on them. For example, the service office, the defense office, the secular affairs office, the miscellaneous office. The signs in the corridors on both sides were unclear. He didn't know what was written on them, but it must be somewhere else. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. If it wasn't for this antique building, he would really suspect that he had traveled back in time. He followed Qingqing to the top floor of the 3rd floor and stopped in front of what seemed to be the largest room. Qingqing shouted from outside, "Disciple Qingqing requests an audience with the sect master." Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked at the sign hanging above. Sure enough, it was the word, sect master. He really suspected that the guy who made these things was also a time traveler. "Come in." A majestic voice came from inside. This feeling was too King familiar. Yu Qianqiu felt his teeth aching. He secretly muttered, "I wonder what rank the sect master is. Governor? Mayor? Or county head?" Qingqing pulled him, who was in a daze. Chapter 44. The sect master of the supporting immortal island, Feng Xiangtian, had already reached the middle stage of the tribulation. He had been in charge of the righteous Tao's number one sect, the supporting immortal island, for more than 100 years. At this moment, he was sitting upright in the sect master's room on the top floor of Penglai Pavilion. Accompanying him were a few elders of supporting immortal island. The few of them were quite worried about the current situation of the cultivation world. Anquangsung had consecutively eradicated several demonic sects within a year, completely breaking the balance between the righteous and demonic sects that had been maintained for hundreds of years. His strong rise had stirred up the entire cultivation world into a state of unrest. Some of the weaker righteous sects had been repeatedly attacked by the demonic sects, and more people from the righteous and demonic sects were involved. It seems that chaos in the correction world is unavoidable. Although my supporting immortal island is the number one sect of the righteous Tao, I'm afraid that we will also be implicated. We need to prepare early. Elder Fei, Elder Guan, and Elder Huang, the 3 of you are in charge of the 10,000 Fragrance Garden, the Alchemy Pavilion, and the Smithing Pavilion. It is very important for our sect to deal with this calamity. All kinds of elixirs and magic tools must be prepared. Once the chaos implicates our supporting immortal island, we must not tarnish our reputation as the number one sect of the righteous path. I reckon that after the chaos, the entire cultivation world will be ranked again according to strength. Our sect's reputation as the number one sect of the righteous path has been maintained for more than 1,000 years. We will not allow it to be destroyed in our generation. Feng Xiangtian had a dignified appearance to begin with. When he spoke, his eyes shone brightly as he glanced at the three elders. "We will do our best," the three elders said in unison. However, when Elder Fei, who was in charge of the myriad fragrance garden, said this, she seemed to lack confidence. Feng Xiangtian looked at him and asked, "Elder Fei, do you have any difficulties? If there is, then don't say it now. This matter concerns the rise and fall of the sect, and we absolutely cannot be careless. Otherwise, if anything goes wrong, we will become the eternal sinners of the sect." Elder Fei looked at the two elders beside him and said with a bitter smile, "There are indeed difficulties." It was true that the 10,000 fragrance garden was the largest spiritual herb garden in the world, but there weren't many spiritual herbs that could be used to refine high-quality pills. Not only did good spiritual herbs grow slowly, but it was also harder for them to survive. Once Elder Guan's alchemy pavilion increases its consumption, I'm afraid that it will really not be able to make ends meet. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Guan, who reeked of medicine, stood up and shouted, "Fei, what do you mean by that? Could it be that you want my alchemy pavilion to reduce the amount of spirit grass used? Don't even think about it." Elder Fei did not get angry even after being rebutted by Elder Guan. He only smiled bitterly and shook his head. Elder Guan's temper was famous in supporting Immortal Island. He didn't care about anything else and only liked to concoct pills. If someone dared to obstruct him from concocting pills, he would fight them to the death. There was no one in supporting Immortal Island who wasn't afraid of him. In the entire cultivation world, he had the title of the pill fanatic. His alchemy skills were probably second to none. Elder Fei, who knew his temper well, did not dare to say anything else. "How about this?" Feng Xiangtian said, "Send more disciples to search for spiritual herbs. Send more people to the myriad fragrance garden as well to increase the production of spiritual herbs. The sect will stop selling elixirs that are intermediate grade and above. First, ensure the elixirs in the supporting Immortal Island's inventory. In addition, I have already notified Elder Quan, who is in charge of the sect supplies, to increase the amount of spirit stones used by all disciples below the core formation stage by 5 times, and the amount of chi storage pills used by all disciples above the core formation stage by 1 time. Elder Jean, who is in charge of the spirit stone mine, will increase the amount of spirit stones extracted. Elder Qin, who is in charge of the common goods, will send back the spirit stones obtained from the outside." The elders nodded. At this moment, they heard the sound of 2 people coming up the stairs. Someone shouted from outside, "Disciple Qingjingxing is here to see the sect leader." Everyone had an impression of Qingjingxing. He was the capable disciple of Elder Qin, who was in charge of the common goods. However, they did not know why he came to see the sect leader. Did something happen outside? Feng Xiangtian frowned and shouted, "Come in." They saw Qingjingxing leading an ordinary-looking man in. The sect leader and the 3 elders looked at him. From his clothes, they could tell that he wasn't a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. What was even stranger was that they couldn't see any cultivation from him. This person was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. Disciple Qingjingxing greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. Qingjingxing bowed. Yu Qianqiu also bowed. Itinerant cultivator Yu Qianqiu greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. "Qingjingxing, why are you looking for me?" Feng Xiangtian said, but his eyes were still sizing up Yu Qianqiu. When he heard Yu Qianqiu say that he was a rogue cultivator, he almost thought that he was mistaken. The other 3 elders also showed the same doubts. Qingjingxing reached out to touch the storage bag hanging on his waist and said respectfully, reporting to Sect Master, "Disciple is bringing the spirit stones back to the island, and I was ordered by Master to bring Yu Qianqiu to see Sect Master." "Your master asked you to bring him?" Feng Xiangtian asked curiously. Qingjingxing quickly took out the supporting immortal token and told them the purpose of Yu Qianqiu's visit. After listening to him, Feng Xiangtian and the 3 elders looked at each other in dismay. The supporting immortal token was a token that could only be obtained by those who held the position of an elder and above. It was used to show one's identity and to give the descendants of the token a chance to join the island. This rule had been established for thousands of years, and Yu Qianqiu was the third person to come with the token. There were originally 300 special tokens on the island. It was said that one would know a secret if they collected all 300 tokens. No one knew what the secret was, but it became a symbol of identity for those who held the position of an elder and above. As time passed, they were distributed one by one. Due to various reasons, there were less than half of the tokens left on the supporting immortal island. That was where the trouble came. Some people, be it in terms of cultivation, qualifications, or contributions, were qualified to assume the position of an elder. However, after assuming the position of an elder, they didn't have a token that represented their status as an elder. Originally, the rule was that only the descendants of the token holders could join the supporting immortal island. Later on, because the number of tokens had dwindled, it was changed to only recognizing the token holders and not the descendants. They were hoping that someone would give the token to them. Now that Yu Qianqiu had brought this token, it would undoubtedly reduce the awkward situation of an elder being in an unjustifiable position. Feng Xiangtian took the token from Qingqing's hand, and after checking it carefully, he nodded slightly at the three elders to show that it was the real supporting immortal token. The three elders couldn't hide their fiery gazes. The three of them were the ones who held the position of an elder but didn't have a token. Actually, it wasn't just the three of them who didn't have a token. When Feng Xiangtian saw the expressions of the three elders, his heart skipped a beat and he had a headache. This wasn't good, as something like this hadn't happened for hundreds of years. This token had to appear when he was in charge of the supporting immortal island. The entire supporting immortal island had over 200 elders, and there were over 50 elders who didn't have a token. If this token was given to any elder, it would definitely offend the other 50 elders and he would have to suffer in the future. Don't think that this was just a small supporting immortal token, it might cause a huge commotion. To put it bluntly, it might even cause him to be kicked out of his position. That would be the first time in the history of the supporting immortal island to be kicked out of his position due to unfairness. Brother, what are you trying to do? Aren't you harming others by bringing this thing here? Thinking about this, Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu and didn't know what to say. Yu Qianqiu didn't know how much trouble he had brought to the number one sect master of the righteous path. When he saw Feng Xiangtian looking at him with malicious intent, his heart skipped a beat and he thought to himself, damn. Is this old fart going back on his words? Chapter 45. Feng Xiangtian's face was gloomy. His gaze swept between the three elders and Yu Qianqiu from time to time. No one spoke in the room. The atmosphere suddenly became strange. Qingqing panicked. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Did I do something wrong? Damn it. What are you doing? It's been almost an hour. If you don't want to accept me, just say it. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Yu Qianqiu, who was standing there respectfully, was a little angry. He straightened his back. His action made Feng Xiangtian's eyes light up. He thought to himself, whoever started the trouble should untie it. The trouble was caused by this kid. It's up to him to solve it. Thinking about this, he smiled and coughed. He said to Yu Qianqiu, "You're Yu Qianqiu, right? That's a good name. Since you brought our sect's immortal supporting token, we will agree to accept you. From now on, you're a disciple of our supporting immortal island. What's your cultivation level now? Tell me." Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Thank you, sect leader, for accepting me. Disciple Yu Qianqiu is very grateful. Disciple's cultivation level is low. I've only reached level 10 qi refinement." The four elders in the room stiffened. Feng Xiangtian, who couldn't see that Yu Qianqiu was only level 10 qi refinement with his tribulation middle stage cultivation level. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Level 10 qi refinement. Feng Xiangtian murmured. This was a little different from his original plan, but it was better this way. He frowned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, there are some things I have to tell you. Although this token can let you join the supporting immortal island, our sect's rule is that those who fail to reach Foundation establishment 3 times will be expelled. You haven't reached Foundation establishment yet, so you have to follow this rule. Think about it carefully. If you regret, you can still take back this immortal supporting token and join our sect after you break through to the Foundation establishment stage. What Feng Xiangtian said was the truth, but there was also an element of intimidation in his words. His intention was to make Yu Qianqiu back off in the face of difficulties, throw the hot immortal supporting medallion back, and enjoy the peace and quiet. When the 3 elders heard Feng Xiangtian's words, their expressions changed, but they had no reason to stop him. They all stared at Yu Qianqiu to see his reaction. As expected, the latter didn't disappoint them. Yu Qianqiu had already heard about these rules from Guan Yu, so he had thought about it very clearly. He immediately shook his head and said, "It's my lifelong dream to be able to join the #1 righteous sect, supporting Immortal Island. Since I'm already here, I won't regret it." "That's good." Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, "Immortal Yu Qianqiu, that token. When a sect elder selects you as a disciple, you can hand over the token to that elder." After saying that, he spread out his palm, and the token slowly flew to Yu Qianqiu. After Yu Qianqiu received the token, he said, "Qinggingqing, take him to register and find a place to stay." Qinggingqing agreed and Yu Qianqiu also thanked him. The 2 of them left the sect master's room. Inside the room, everyone was silent for a while. Then, Elder Huang suddenly said, "Sect master, I don't think we need to trouble the other elders. Why don't we let this kid join our pavilion of refining as an assistant?" "That's not appropriate." Elder Fei smiled. Elder Huang, sect master, also said that Wanfen Garden needs to increase the production of spiritual herbs. "I think this kid is quite suitable. Let's let him join our Wanfen Garden." Bullsh *T. Elder Guan from the pavilion of refining elixir scolded. He stood up and glared at the other 2 elders. "You 2 old things, don't give me that. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. There's only 1 token. If anyone wants it, it'll depend on their own ability. Otherwise, I'll be the first to object." "Humph. Sect master, I'll take my leave." He turned and left. Elder Fei and Elder Huang looked at each other. They knew they couldn't afford to offend him, so they didn't say anything. After Elder Guan left, they seemed to remember something and immediately stood up to bid farewell to the sect master. Everyone in the sect master's room left in an instant. Seeing that he was the only one left, Feng Xiangtian heaved a sigh of relief. If he hadn't thought of this method, he would have been in deep trouble. Just the 3 elders were already enough to cause a ruckus, and if the 50 elders were to come at him at the same time. No, he had to inform the others as well, or else it would be troublesome. Thinking of this, Feng Xiangtian took out a piece of jade and made a finger sign on it. After muttering a few words, he crushed it in his hand and let out a sigh of relief. After Yu Qianqiu and Qinggingqing went downstairs, Qinggingqing wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're the first person the sect master has talked so much to a qi condensation disciple. I'm also benefiting from it. After I hand over the spirit stones, I'll bring you to the registration." Yu Qianqiu didn't have any objections. He accompanied Qinggingqing to quickly count and hand over the spirit stones. After that, the 2 of them went to the registration area for the new disciples. Because it was the sect master's decree, things went smoothly. After walking out of Penglai Pavilion, Qinggingqing smiled and said, "Yu Qianqiu, congratulations. From today onwards, you're a disciple of Fuxian Island. It's been hard on you, Grand Master Cheng," Yu Qianqiu said with a bit of sincere gratitude. As a newcomer who had just arrived, and in this cold cultivation world, it was indeed a very rare thing to meet someone who spoke to you in a pleasant manner. "It's just a convenience." "You're welcome." Qinggingqing waved his hand and suddenly frowned. "You haven't found a master yet. I'm afraid you won't have a place to stay for the time being. Why don't you stay at my place first? You can leave with your master after we decide on an elder to be your master." Yu Qianqiu thought about it and agreed. Moreover, it was indeed more convenient to follow an acquaintance. Just as he was about to nod and agree, he suddenly heard someone laughing behind him. Then you might as well worship me as your master. You can stay at my alchemy pavilion. Yu Qianzhou turned around and saw that it was one of the elders he met just now. Before he could react, he heard Qingjingxing greet him. Elder Guan. Yu Qianzhou could only greet him. Haha. No need to be so courteous, no need to be so courteous. Elder Guan clasped his hands behind his back and stared at Yu Qianzhou with a smile. He walked around him twice as if he was looking at a treasure. The latter shuddered under his stare. He only knew that Elder Guan was an elder but did not know what he did. In addition to the smell of medicine, Yu Qianzhou could not help but think of those medical freaks who like to experiment on human bodies. Elder Guan stopped walking around and put on a kind expression. Yu Qianzhou, is this how you want me to be your master? Yu Qianzhou did not know how to answer. He felt that something was not right. An elder of the number 1 righteous sect, Fuxian Island, was rushing to be his master? Then, he looked at Qingjingxing's slightly surprised expression. There was a problem. There was definitely a problem. Haha. A hearty laughter was heard. Yu Qianzhou turned around and saw the other 2 elders walking towards him. Qingjingxing bowed again. Elder Fei, Elder Huang. Yu Qianzhou had no choice but to bow as well. Haha. The 2 elders laughed and said in unison, no need to be so polite. Elder Fei looked at Yu Qianzhou with a smile and said, Yu Qianzhou, you should be my disciple. Yu Qianzhou, I have the same intention. Follow me. Elder Huang said. Ah. Yu Qianzhou and Qingjingxing were stunned at the same time. Elder Guan's face turned from sunny to gloomy. He looked terrible. Chapter 46. Who is Yu Qianzhou? A silhouette descended from the sky and landed in front of them. The newcomer's gaze swept across them before finally landing on Yu Qianzhou, who was dressed differently from the rest. He asked, You are Yu Qianzhou? Yu Qianzhou nodded. Before he could say anything, the person said impatiently, Come with me. I will take you as my disciple. Bullshit. Elder Guan stood in front of Yu Qianzhou. Elder Fei and Elder Huang also stood in front of the person. Elder Fei chuckled and said, Elder Lu, when did you learn to rob? Qingjingxing and Yu Qianzhou were dumbfounded. They didn't know what these people were trying to do. Elder Lu, who had just arrived, said disapprovingly, Old Fei, what are you saying? Yu Qianzhou hasn't acknowledged anyone as his master yet. He will naturally follow whoever he wishes to acknowledge as his master. How am I a robber? Huh, I like what Elder Lu said. Another silhouette landed in front of the crowd. Before the newcomer could steady himself, he saw dozens of silhouettes descending from all directions. People kept asking, Who is Yu Qianzhou? It was obvious that the group of elders were here for Yu Qianzhou. Qingjingxing looked at Yu Qianzhou suspiciously. He really couldn't see what was so good about him that so many elders were fighting for him. However, he didn't know that Yu Qianzhou shuddered. He thought of a fairy tale in his previous life. There was a monk named Tang Seng. It was said that eating his meat could make one immortal. Could it be that my meat has the same effect? Yu Qianzhou's divine sense immediately locked on the golden pearl in his dantian. If he found anything wrong, he would leave immediately. The window of the sect leader's room on the 3rd floor of Penglai Pavilion was open. Sect leader Feng Xiangtian looked at the group of elders below and shook his head with a wry smile. Once again, he felt that he had made the wisest decision. When the surrounding disciples saw so many elders gathered together, they didn't know what was going on. They wanted to go over and take a look, but they didn't dare to. Not long after, there was a large crowd of disciples surrounding them, and there were even more who heard the commotion and came over to watch. No matter how courageous Yu Qianzhou was, he couldn't help but sweat beads on his forehead when being stared at by a group of old fellows who had lived for at least 200 years. This kind of pressure was too great. Yu Qianzhou felt his throat was a little dry. He swallowed his saliva and bowed to everyone, disciple Yu Qianshou greets the elders. There's no need to be so polite. The elders replied one after another. Everyone's tone was as if they were Yu Qianshou's master. Yu Qianshou smiled awkwardly at everyone. Oh my God! What kind of background does this Yu Qianshou have? So many elders have to give him face. Chen Gingxing also felt the huge pressure. He couldn't help but wipe the beads of sweat off his forehead. He looked around and realized that he was surrounded by elders. There was no way out even if he wanted to. All the elders had gathered, and everyone was well aware of what each of them was thinking. Everyone was silent for a moment. Elder Lu, who had just arrived, swept his gaze across everyone and said in a deep voice, "Everyone standing here isn't a solution. There is only one immortal supporting token. The sect leader has said that whoever accepts Yu Qianshou as a disciple will be qualified to receive the immortal supporting token. Since the sect leader has said so, we will naturally comply. Now, it seems like all the elders want to accept Yu Qianshou as a disciple. However, there is only one Yu Qianshou and one immortal supporting token. We can't possibly fight over it. Don't dawdle. If you have something to say, say it." Elder Guan said impatiently. Elder Lu rolled his eyes. Just as he wanted to retort, he realized that not many people could afford to offend this crazy old man. Who knew when he would have to ask him to concoct pills for him? He could only shut his mouth. If it was someone else, he would definitely say, "If you don't want to wait, you can leave first. No one is stopping you here." Damn it. That scared me. So they are all here for the immortal supporting token in my hands. Yu Qianshou finally heaved a sigh of relief. Chen Gingxing also understood that his master, Elder Qin, had an immortal supporting token. It was no wonder that Elder Qin had asked him to send Yu Qianshou to Immortal Supporting Island. If his master didn't have it, he would have gotten it first. Then, Yu Qianshou wouldn't have called him Ancestor Master. He would have called him Senior Brother. Chen Gingxing finally understood why his master had smiled so strangely. He knew that there would be a show to watch. Elder Lu, we are all from the same sect. It would be a joke if we fought over a token. If you have any ideas, just say them. Everyone, let's hear it and see if it works. One of the elders said. That's right. Elder Lu, why don't you say it first? Many of the elders agreed. Elder Lu looked at Elder Guan with a pleased expression. Unfortunately, Elder Guan only rolled his eyes at him. He could only smile and say, "Actually, it's very simple. Let Yu Qianshou choose. He can follow whoever he wants to be his disciple. The immortal support token will naturally belong to that person." What do all the elders think about this? If you agree, why don't you all be witnesses in case someone goes back on his words? When he said the last sentence, his eyes were fixed on Elder Guan. The meaning behind his words was clear. Elder Guan glared back and patted his chest. Whoever goes back on his words is a grandson. All the elders felt that this was a good idea. Let's not fight over it. Let Yu Qianshou choose himself. Whoever he chooses will be lucky. Hence, they all agreed. In an instant, the tense atmosphere disappeared. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianshou. Elder Lu said to him, "Yu Qianshou, you heard everyone's words. You can find whoever you think is suitable to be your master. No one is forcing you. Don't worry and don't be afraid." Chen Gingxing glanced at the fiery gazes around him. He looked at Yu Qianshou with sympathy. He thought to himself that no one was easy to choose. This matter offended too many people, and not just any ordinary person, but all the elders. TSK. What's there to be afraid of? Yu Qianshou, who was bowing respectfully to the elders, gradually straightened his back. He glanced at the sect leader at the window on the third floor of the Penglai Pavilion. Now he understood why the sect leader tried so hard to return the fairy supporting token to him. He knew that there would be trouble. The elders looked at him with kindness, dignity, and love. In short, all of their gazes conveyed the same message. I am the master you should choose. Yu Qianqiu felt his scalp tingling. Elder Guan's eyes were clearly threatening him. It was as if he was telling him, young man. If you don't choose me as your master, I will teach you a lesson. What is going on? I am new here. I can't afford to offend any of them. Yu Qianqiu looked at the sect leader at the window again. Feng Xiangtian seemed to have seen his pleading eyes. He disappeared behind the window and muttered with a bitter smile, young man, don't blame me. It is better for you to offend them than me. Damn! Why did I go in the opposite direction? They are begging me. Why should I be afraid? Yu Qianqiu suddenly realized what was going on when he saw the expectation hidden in the elder's expressions. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.